The protagonist of this story, Aragi Kai, seemed to everyone around him to be just an ordinary, gloomy teenager from high school, but in reality, he was anything but simple. He was a professional assassin who terrified his victims, none of whom had ever escaped. Arai's classmates hated him and bullied him because of his antisocial behavior and weird aura, but everything changed one day when Aragi and his class were suddenly transported to another world, a world of swords and magic. A mysterious messenger announced to them all that they were heroes called to this world to defeat the Demon King, and for such a daunting task, she bestowed them with superpowers. Obviously, Aragi Kai got the most powerful one of all. If you want to know which one, let's start this story from the beginning and dig deeper. The scene starts with a man running through a dark alley. He looked anxious and afraid. As he came to a stop, he looked back, thinking maybe he got away, but suddenly, someone put a knife against his throat. He told the assassin that he would give him money in return for his life, but the very next second, the assassin slit his throat. The next morning, a young schoolboy was on his way to school, looking tired. His name was Aragi Kai. He yawned, thinking it really sucked to go to school after working all night long. He worked as an assassin. When he entered his classroom, the other students started whispering among themselves. A boy named Midu Shuji greeted him with a wide smile. He was the soccer club's ace and the class president. Kai returned his greeting coldly and sat down. Meanwhile, a girl named Nagasi Ria observed everything and commented that Kai was rude as always. She was a fashionable girl who stood out from the rest of the class. She approached Shuji and sternly told him that he didn't need to greet people like Kai. Shuji defended him by saying he might be tired, hence his coldness. Suddenly, another student walked into the classroom, and upon seeing him, Ria remarked how an even ruder person had just entered. The rude student's name was Arashi Shunsuke, the leader of a notorious local gang. A few students greeted Arashi, but when he saw that Kai was sleeping instead of greeting him, he went to his bench and yelled at him to get up. He reached out to grab him, but Kai caught his hand before he could react, saying he was sleepy and asking what he wanted. He let go of his hand, and Arashi called him a weirdo. Suddenly, another student named Kenzaki Rin told them to be quiet. She was beautiful and talented in both martial arts and literature, the cool, aloof top beauty of the school. Arashi confronted her, but was cut short by another girl named Hashimoto M, a serious class committee girl who truly cared about order. Watching her get ready to fight Arashi, a boy named Narumi Yoshia told her that Arashi would just blow her away. Yoshia was a shallow and frivolous guy. Everyone soon returned to their seats, and this was Shinzo High School's first-year class, and it was just another regular day with plenty of problems. Kai was still keeping his head down when he suddenly sensed a weird sensation coming from under Shuji's feet. A bright blue light began emanating from the floor, and a magic spell circle appeared. Soon, everyone in the class noticed and looked confused and shocked. The magic circle grew in size, covering the entire classroom floor. Shuji instructed everyone to leave, but Kai knew they wouldn't make it in time. Soon, the bright light blinded everyone, and they were all teleported inside what looked like an old castle. Everyone was lying unconscious on the ground, and Kai was the first to regain consciousness. He noticed that the building was made of stone, with several large pillars providing cover, and there was only one exit. Soon, the other students began to come to their senses. Everyone was in a panic, but Shuji calmed them down, and Kai felt relieved that Shuji could keep the whole class from losing it. Arashi got up and said they couldn't waste any time, asking his two minions to follow him. Kai stopped him and said he could hear footsteps approaching from the other side of the door. Kai sensed that a man and a woman were coming through. Soon the door opened, and a girl and an old man entered the room. They both looked like medieval knight and princess, and wore unusual, old-fashioned, flowy clothes with capes. The girl greeted the students, complimenting them and calling them hero candidates. The students were shocked to see them. Kai analyzed both of them and concluded that the man had the physique of a sword user and was on guard too, while the girl seemed pretty normal, with a hint of muscle. The girl introduced herself as Leonora, the Archbishop of the Holy Country Digest, and the man with her was Gas, a knight and her protector. Arashi told her he'd never heard of the country and asked if she was messing with them. The girl replied she certainly wasn't messing with them. Shuji stepped forward and explained they had suddenly found themselves there and were a bit on edge. Leonora began explaining everything to them. They were summoned to a parallel world as humanity's hope to defeat the evil Demon King. They were the hero candidates of this parallel world. It was hard for the students to believe something like that. Gas told Arashi to watch his mouth when talking to the saint of the country. Arashi was unfazed, prompting Gas to draw his sword, but Leonora pacified him. Arashi lunged at Gas, and Kai was amazed by his bravery. Before Arashi could land an attack, Gas flung his sword, making a little cut on Arashi's head. His attack was so fast that no one saw it coming. Leonora apologized for Gas's aggression, explaining that because of the Demon King's invasion, humanity in that world was facing extinction. The country of Digest had continued to resist, but they no longer had the power to stop the invasion completely. Kai thought the story was pretty common, she continued, saying they were humanity's last hope. Upon hearing this, the students replied that they couldn't do this since they had never fought before. Some of the girls were already crying. Gaia suggested it might seem impossible, but they had to try, since there was no way to return to their own world without defeating the Demon King. The students were shocked to hear this. Kai realized he was saying it to motivate them, thinking that the people who had lived peacefully couldn't just start killing without experience and talent. Arashi stood up with blood on his head, cursing them for dictating their actions, saying he hated people like them. Gas noticed Arashi's spirit remained unbroken and wondered if he could be a useful warrior. He gripped his sword, deciding to kill Arashi as he could be a liability. But before he acted, he saw Leonora healing Arashi's wound. She explained that her power came from something called the system, granted to them by their lords, likening it to magic from their world. Kai noted she was familiar with their culture and speculated if she'd summoned others from their world previously. Leonora approached Shuji, explaining that the power was the reason they were summoned. Raising her hands made Shuji's wrist glow, resulting in a sword of light appearing in his hand. She elaborated that they could harness the system's power to awaken their innate abilities of divine protection. Aware of her selfish request to keep them from leaving, she asked them to lend her their powers. Shuji asserted that no matter how much power they gave, they still couldn't fight immediately. Leonora responded they'd indeed be trained and taken care of during that training. Shuji took charge, reassuring his classmates that they were scared but needed information and protection first. He advised them to listen to her for now, and they agreed. Seeing their readiness, Leonora began bestowing their divine powers. Mueri received telekinesis, Arashi gained explosion powers, Reina got fire powers, Yoshia was given wind powers, and others were given various amazing abilities. When Leonora asked if anyone was left, Kai raised his hand. She bestowed powers upon him as well, and he noticed his vision changing. Once he finished, he could read Leonora's stats. His eye color shifted to red, and she revealed he had received the rare power of judgment, allowing him to see target stats and details. He tested his power on himself, gaining insight into his own stats. Arashi also tried out his powers, mocking Kai for his new eye color. Kai observed the other students acting superior, despite being largely uninformed and possessing powers that could easily be revoked. He remained calm, knowing he had plenty of ways to kill people. After everyone received their powers, Leonora told them to rest for the evening. The hero candidates were taken to their rooms. Kai snuck out through his window, seeking more information. He overheard guards patrolling and discussing the hero candidates' weakness, mocking how those kids were chosen to defeat the Demon King. One guard mused that the saint surely knew something they did not. Kai listened closely, using his judgment power to check one guard's stats. Realizing he only knew swordsmanship, he then scouted the fortified city structure. The inner castle was heavily guarded, making it hard to sneak in, so he decided to be patient and return later. Meanwhile, Rina searched for a practice spot with her two minions. They rehearsed their new powers, conjuring their respective elements, as Rina wanted to understand more about divine protection. Kai hid in some bushes, spying on them when he suddenly felt a strange sensation. The girls heard a weird noise from the bushes, revealing a giant lizard-like creature attracted by their magic. Kai quickly checked the monster's stats using his magic, shocked by its overwhelming stats. Soon, the monster roared and chased after the girls. Kai concluded the lizard was strong and aggressive, but lacked intelligence, running only in a straight line. He threw a knife, which pierced its thick skin. Meanwhile, Rina stumbled and fell. The monster caught up to her, about to step on her, when it suddenly stopped. The girls looked around and saw a knife protruding from its head, bleeding. They assumed someone saved her, but decided to leave the area. Kai had no reason to save them, but couldn't ignore his conscience. He figured things wouldn't be easy with monsters freely roaming around. As he approached the monster's body to retrieve his knife, he sensed someone nearby. He concealed himself behind the monster's body, scanning the area but not spotting anyone. He returned to his room to avoid trouble. After he left, someone emerged from behind a wall, cloaked, making it impossible to see their face. This person smashed the monster's head, squeezing out its eyes, expressing disappointment over the hero candidate's weakness, but noticing Kai smelled similar. And the next morning, Gas brought the dead monster's body to the hero candidates, who were shocked. Gas explained it was found dead near the royal capital the night before, attributing it to the Demon King driving the monsters mad and craving human flesh. He informed informed the hero candidates they'd face creatures like this one. He asked Stude, a researcher, if he found anything unusual about the monster. Stude replied there were traces of sorcery, likely from a mid-grade demon, suggesting it might have been scouting new hero candidates. Kai pondered whether sorcery differed from magic, as it was a new term used by Stude. Shuji questioned if that meant a demon controlled the monster. Stude mentioned that strong demons could cast servitude spells to control weaker monsters. Gas dragged Stude away before he could elaborate, but Kai found Stude's insights valuable for gathering information. Suddenly, he realized the true identity of the eyes he sensed the previous night belonged to a Demonon, skilled enough that Kai barely noticed. He felt a presence looking at him, prompting Arashi to tell Gas they couldn't return to their world without defeating the demon anyway, and that he didn't plan to stay in this world long. The other students agreed. Kai figured they needed to quickly grasp the heavy truth. Just then, Leonora entered, assuring them not to be afraid. They just needed training to learn how to use their powers. Since they were from a different world, their growth rate would differ from that world's people. A week passed since their training began, and Kai was now reading books in the library, already understanding every letter in this new language. He thought it was strange enough that they could talk to each other in the first place. His judgment power wasn't suited for battle, so he was left out of the training but allowed to enter the library. He couldn't find many books on their history and culture, and not much about demons either. The strongest 5 among them were Narumi, the wind controller, Arashi, with his explosion powers, Kinaki, with her telekinesis, Hashimoto, with her land power, and Rino, with her fire abilities. However, there was another person with an extraordinary growth rate, Shuji. He had become stronger than the people who taught him swordsmanship. Kai used his judgment power and noticed that all his stats were above B grade, while just last week they had been below D grade. Suddenly, 2 boys approached Kai and started making fun of him. Even the others looked down on him. They were getting cocky after gaining their new powers. One of the boys tried to bully Kai, but Kai sneakily threw him to the ground. Meanwhile, Leonora and Gas arrived at the training ground. She announced that since everyone had grown faster than she expected, she had decided to advance their plans. Narumi asked if she intended to send them to fight the Demon King, but she refused, stating that she wanted them to practice fighting monsters first. Everyone looked anxious when they heard this. And the next day, Gas and Leonora took all the hero candidates to the middle of a forest and explained that they were there for combat drills. It was a place full of obstacles, where they couldn't move freely as one group. That's why they would be divided into teams of 2 to 3 people. Hearing this, all the hero candidates formed their own groups, leaving Kai and Kenzaki alone. They had no choice but to team up with each other. Kai thought she had a confident and apathetic personality, and she was proud. She caught him staring at her. Meanwhile, Leonora announced that since it was a special occasion, the team that defeated the most monsters would receive a surprise reward. Soon, the combat drills began. On their way, Kenzaki told Kai that her powers were superior to everyone else's, so she didn't need him to do anything, and asked him not to get in her way. Kai accepted the offer and said he would leave everything to her. Seeing this, she asked if he had no pride. He sensed 4 entities around them hiding. One of the monsters rushed at them, and Kenzaki used her powers. Her ability, called Domination, enforced her orders on the target. She commanded the goblin to bow, and it complied. She looked visibly tired after a few minutes and explained that using her powers for too long consumed a lot of mana. He asked her to just kill the goblin because another monster was about to attack, but she hesitated, saying the monster looked a bit human. Kai hit her with a reality check, saying it was a monster after all. Having tried to attack them earlier, he picked up a stone, concluding that she was just a naive student from Japan too used to peace. While he was playing with the stone, the other 3 goblins appeared. She commanded the goblins to bow and asked Kai for help instead of just standing there. Kai replied that she was the one who told him not to get in her way. She sighed and ordered the goblins to twist their own necks, which killed them. He was amazed she could enforce such orders too, and she replied that the harder the order, the lower the chances of success. She was disgusted to see the goblin corpses, but Kai comforted her with words of wisdom. She asked how he could be so calm when he didn't even have powers. He told her not to worry about him. It was his strong point. He asked if she wanted to return if she was too scared, but of course, she denied the proposal with pride. He knew she was just trying to look brave, but he admitted she wasn't too bad after all. Meanwhile, Narumi and Hashimoto were running from a monster that was too strong for them, but running wasn't an option, so they decided to attack the monster together, using their wind and earth powers. They hit the monster with a giant boulder, but it barely scratched it. They felt helpless and didn't know what to do next. Kenzaki wanted to go back to her world since she hadn't repaid her grandfather for raising her, and she really wanted to show him how much she had grown up. She was lost in her thoughts when Kai asked if she wanted to keep going since they might get lost. They started bantering, and she wondered why Kai was so mysterious and stubborn. They were messing around when suddenly they heard a loud noise. Kenzaki recognized it as Hashimoto's voice. Kai asked what they should do, and she replied that they should obviously help her. Meanwhile, Hashimoto was thrown far away by the monster. She was wounded and bleeding. She told Narumi to run away, but it was too late as the monster was about to attack him too. Kenzaki used her powers and commanded the monster to stop. Narumi thanked her, but she said the monster was too powerful to be halted for long. Kai asked Narumi if Hashimoto was alive, to which he replied that she was but badly injured. Kai told her to carry Hashimoto on his back and get out of there. He was reluctant to leave, but seeing her condition, he acquiesced. Once he left, Kai used his powers to check the monster's stats, and was amazed to see they were pretty high, especially its defense. He knew his attacks wouldn't damage it much, and also noticed it was a mutant, wondering what that meant. Kenzaki yelled that she couldn't hold on any longer, and he told her that she had bought them enough time. They should run away too. She agreed, seeing the situation, but she couldn't use her legs anymore since she had expended all her energy on stopping the monster. Realizing how dire things were, Kai pulled out a smoke grenade and activated it. This bought him more time to grab Kenzaki and hide. She was a bit flustered being carried in his arms. She asked him what the smoke was, and he explained it was a smoke grenade he had made while they were training. He lied, saying he had some equipment on him before being summoned, and since it wasn't much, he didn't want to use it carelessly. They were equipped with basic assassin gear. Kenzaki apologized to Kai since she had insisted they go save their friends, only to end up needing saving herself. Kai asked her not to apologize, suggesting instead she thank him again, leading to some playful banter. She suggested they should run away, but he replied that there was no need to do that. They both spotted Shuji and the others arriving, and without wasting any time, he attacked the bear that had hurt his friends. Shuji quickly struck the monster, injuring its hand. Rina jumped in next, using her fire powers on the beast, but it hardly seemed affected aside from slowing it down. They made another attack on the monster, as someone watched them from a distance, an experienced assassin demon named Delis. Delphus smirked to himself, thinking that the armored monster wouldn't defeat the hero candidates given their rapid growth. He was particularly impressed by how calm they were, especially Shuji. What was supposed to be a scouting mission now required a shift in plans. He decided it was time to eliminate them. Meanwhile, Shuji and the others managed to defeat the monster, and just as Delphus was about to attack them, he was suddenly stopped by a dagger at his neck. It was Kai. Stunned to find himself caught off guard, Delphus wondered how Kai got behind him and desperately sought a way to escape. Kai slashed at his legs, throwing him to the ground. He instructed Delphus to stay quiet, not wanting Shuji and the others to notice him. Kai then told Delphus that if he answered some questions, he would let him go. Even though Delphus didn't want to cooperate, he had no choice since Kai had the upper hand. Kai speculated whether Delphus was the one watching him the other night, revealing he knew they were being spied on and that it was part of his plan to draw out the assassin by letting Shuji and the others fight. Cutting Delphus off, Kai made it clear he needed information since they had only recently arrived in this world and demanded answers. Delphus smirked and refused, but when Kai slashed his hands, he stated it would be easier if he just cooperated. In response, Delphus warned Kai not to underestimate him, claiming he had consumed some poison he carried, thus killing himself instantly. Kai realized that fighting the Demon King's army wouldn't be easy. Suddenly, Kenzaki approached him, shocked to see the dead body nearby. Kai asked how long she'd been watching, and she replied since the assassin hit the ground. He explained that the dead demon was part of the Demon King's army, and that the earlier monster was merely his pawn. The revelation that the Demon King was trying to kill the hero candidates frightened her. Curious, she asked how he had noticed the assassin when no one else did. Kai decided there was no reason to hide his secret anymore, confessing that his family had been in the assassination business, so he could sense he was in the same line of work. Kenzaki was shocked by this revelation. He told her it was up to her to believe him, and asked her not to reveal the dead body, as the hero candidates were already shaken by Hashimoto's condition. She agreed, and expressed surprise at how much he cared about them. He replied it was simply because they weren't used to fighting like he was. All the hero candidates gathered around Hashimoto, who lay severely injured on the floor. A student named Heino, with healing powers, sat near her and used those powers to heal her. Everyone was amazed to see her abilities, and Hano announced that Hashimoto would be healed in about an hour. Hero candidates praised Shuji for defeating the monster. Just then, Leonora and Guas arrived, and the candidates asked where they had been and why they hadn't helped when needed. Guas explained that he had been there the whole time, keeping an eye on them, and that it wouldn't be smart to save them every time. Shuji insisted that the injury was severe, and Hashimoto could even die. Guas coldly replied that risking one's life was a natural part of practical military drills. This was the kind of battle they would face moving forward, so they shouldn't complain. Shuji questioned Guas about the armored monster appearing, when he had said the area was only populated with weaker monsters. Leonora suggested it must have been because of the demon assassin, as armored monsters shouldn't have been there. Jiyu and Leonora decided to bolster their defenses, oblivious to the fact Kai had already dealt with the assassin. Leonora also mentioned they should enhance their training level because at their current ability, they would all end up dead. This frightened everyone, and Shuji tried to reason with her, but she insisted getting stronger was their only chance to survive. Unsatisfied with being bossed around, Arashi interjected to challenge Leonora, but Jia held him back, stating that they were all just pawns of Leonora and couldn't disobey her orders, and the situation heated up, prompting Shuji to calm Masashi, since they had no choice but to comply. Impressed by Shuji's composure, Guaz assured the candidates not to worry, as they were important assets for the country, and as long as they behaved, nothing bad would happen. Still unsatisfied, Arashi attacked Guaz using his explosive powers, but Guaz quickly dodged and retaliated with a hard punch that knocked Arashi to the ground. He declared that they were all weak, and that training would only get tougher from now on before he and Leonora left. Arashi stood up, bleeding, and vowed to kill Guaz the following day. Steady, the researcher in charge of training, spoke with the candidates after discussing the previous day. He informed them they would be fighting monsters at his research facility, where all kinds of monsters were locked up for his experiments. Soon, the drill began, forcing hero candidates to fight monsters. Kai noticed that, surprisingly, everyone remained calm despite being thrust into action. Shuji told Steady that the monsters were powerful for the candidates, but Steady replied that Leonora had instructed him to be strict, so he wouldn't lighten the training. He added that hero candidates with peers like them shouldn't be losing in the first place. The most important factor was their will. Shuji asked whether that truly made a difference, and Steady explained that with proper training, they could increase their power levels and even develop new abilities. Kai joined in, telling Shuji he could see he had gained a new power. Surprised, Shuji asked Steady if he could test it out. Excited to see the power himself, Steady gave him the go. Shuji unleashed his new abilities, swiftly cutting off the monster's hand and head in one clean motion. Kai realized that Shuji wouldn't struggle against an armored monster now, and pondered whether his judgment powers had leveled up too. That night, Kai noticed that someone else had received a new ability, and it was Arashi. However, he decided against telling him. Later, Arashi plotted to kill Guaz, tie up Leonora, and demand the way back to their real world. A few other candidates supported him, eager to escape this world as well. Arashi asked Narumi to join them since they had a better chance together, and he knew Narumi was fed up with that world too. Narumi hesitated, but in the end, he decided to join. The next day, Shuji was training when Kai approached him, commenting on how hard he was working. Shuji replied that he still felt weak and needed to improve, to which Kai said that with his current power level, he could defeat half the knights in that world. Shuji insisted that wasn't enough, since he couldn't defeat Gas and needed more power to protect everyone. Kai then asked what Shuji thought of Leonora and Gas. Shuji admitted he knew they were using them as pawns in their battle, but was sure they wouldn't harm them. Kai asked if that meant Shuji was willing to put his life on the line until the Demon King was defeated. Shuji agreed, and said he'd made up his mind that he had to be the only one fighting. He would become the country's hero, defeat the Demon King, and negotiate to ensure everyone else could live safely. Kai wondered if Leonora would allow that, and just then, she and Gas walked in. She told Steady that he would be in charge of the candidates' training while she was away. Steady was happy to help, and after she and Gas left, Gas asked Leonora if she was sure she made the right choice. He urged her not to joke and say it plainly. He added that Arashi was stirring trouble, and she agreed, noting it might lead to a rebellion against them. He asked her next move, and she expressed curiosity about what they'd do. Gas was worried about the rebellion since they were hero candidates, and had powers that could be disastrous for them, but Leonora was calm. She knew they couldn't defeat her. She mentioned creating a hierarchy to crush the rebellion and break their teeth once and for all. She also said she noticed some other suspicious things but would leave them for now. Later that night, Kai was fighting a monster, killing it just like he did on the first night, only taking 13 seconds. When he used his judgment power on himself, he realized he had leveled up. Suddenly, another monster attacked him, and this one was tough as blades couldn't pierce it. This was the perfect chance to test his new skill, which could detect the target's weak spot. Once he found it, he killed the monster in the blink of an eye. It was a decent skill, but he needed more to survive in that world. He had to get even stronger. More monsters showed up, and he defeated them too easily. He needed a bigger challenge, and soon he heard human footsteps. He spotted Kenzaki and asked what she was doing there so late at night. She said she was looking for him since he wasn't in the dorm. He asked her to leave, reminding her that the forest was dangerous at night. He was used to fighting at night, but she wasn't. She silenced him and asked what he was doing there anyway. He told her he was testing his new powers. She asked what his new power was, but he started messing with her. She admitted she was worried about him, and when confronted, she blushed and made excuses. They were talking when suddenly they noticed smoke rising in the distance. It was a fire. Their dorm was on fire. They both rushed back and saw other candidates fighting monsters. Narumi said he was glad to see them both. He explained that when he woke up, he saw the fire and the monsters. Kai remarked that a human must be responsible and that the ringleader had to be nearby. He told them to find and catch whoever did this. Steady appeared on top of a building and praised their judgment. Kai wondered how the monsters appeared, but then realized they were all from his lab. He had also given them some medicine to grow stronger since they were too weak to be of any use. Kai asked what the objective was and what benefit Steady would get from killing candidates. Steady said it was a direct order from above. He was told to destroy the candidates, even if it meant sacrificing his current position. He smiled, saying he had nothing against them, but sadly still had to kill them. They asked if it was Leonora's order, but he denied it, saying it wasn't that Vixen's order, it was the Demon King's command. He was the Demon King's spy, and said that if he executed his task well, he'd be offered a researcher position on the other side too. Kai questioned if he had sunk so deep into darkness that all he cared about was researching monsters. Steady ordered his monsters to attack them, and Kenzaki used her powers to stop them, but it was useless as they quickly broke her spell and came after her. Kai jumped in to save her, which thrilled Steady as he was amazed by Kai's powers. Kai continued to take down the other monsters, finishing almost a dozen of them, making Steady furious since Kai didn't even have strong powers to begin with. He used judgment power on Steady, and noticed all his stats were poor, but the surprising part was that Steady had dominated powers like Kenzaki, but even stronger. This was why Kenzaki's power was nullified. Steady, shaken, activated something he didn't want to use, but felt he had no choice. He warned Kai that he would soon find out what he activated. Kai jumped to attack, wanting to waste no time, but suddenly a giant red dragon blasted fire at him. This was Strat's trump card. The dragon started hurling boulders at them. Kai told Narumi to take Kenzaki and leave as another attack was coming. Kai again used his power to pinpoint the dragon's weak spot, its neck. He tried to cut it, but his attack power wasn't enough. Just then, Arashi appeared and attacked the dragon, boasting about how he could hurt it. The dragon countered, and Kai told Arashi they needed to take the monster down together. Arashi questioned why he would need him, and Kai explained he could spot the weak points but lacked the attack power. Arashi stubbornly insisted he didn't need help from a newbie, but there was no time for that as the dragon attacked again. The dragon spewed fire at Arashi, and he finally agreed to team up with Kai. Kai explained the weak point was a scale on its neck, planning to get its attention while Arashi would hit the weak spot. Steady commanded the dragon to kill them. The dragon charged at them again, and Kai distracted it while Arashi aimed for the weak point. The dragon fell to the ground, defeated. Kai asked Steady if he had any other trump cards, as his already lost. Steady admitted he still had other monsters, but unfortunately, Shuji and the others had already defeated them. In a last-ditch effort, Steady tried to escape but was caught by Narumi. Kai asked him to spill everything, and he easily agreed because he was a coward. But before he could say a word, his body turned purple, and he died. A curse had been placed on him that would kill him the moment he tried to leak any information. The next day, the candidates confronted Leonora when she returned, as she had left Steady in charge. She apologized, explaining that she didn't think a weak demon tamer like him could cause so much chaos. The candidates were shocked to learn she knew Steady was a demon tamer. They questioned why she let him be close to them if she was aware of this. Defending herself, she said she had already mentioned their training would be tougher, so what happened was just part of the process. Gas accused them of not being careful enough to see the fire at night. Leonora informed them that they would all be visiting the royal capital, next focusing on the reveal of the hero candidates. A public parade would be held in the royal capital, and they would take the stage as the leading actors. And that evening, they set out for the capital and camped in a field that night. Arashi told his minions that there were about 30 soldiers with them who really weren't that strong. He announced it was time to set their plan in motion, since they could easily outnumber them, and asked one of his minions to call call Narumi and his group over. Kai was listening to this conversation and agreed there weren't many soldiers with them, but it was only because Gas and Leonora were confident they could handle the situation themselves. He approached Shuji and asked if they could talk later that night. Arashi and Narumi met in the nearby forest, ready to attack the soldiers when Shuji and the other candidates stepped in to stop them. Shuji indicated he had heard Arashi was trying to kill Leonora and Gas, shocking Arashi, who realized his plan had been leaked. They tried to reason with him, suggesting there could be another way rather than just killing them. Arashi told Shuji he was all talk and asked if he had a plan. Shuji replied that he would act as a pawn to defeat the Demon King in exchange for guaranteeing everyone's safety. Arashi wasn't on board with that deal and told Shuji to get out of his way, but Shuji and the others wouldn't let him pass. Unable to reach an agreement, they began fighting. Suddenly, two soldiers interrupted them, telling them to get some sleep since they had an early morning trip. Arashi walked away, saying he was tired of their weakness and that talking was pointless. They all reached the royal capital the next day, which was overcrowded due to the ceremony. People on the streets were amazed to see the hero candidates, showing a lot of faith in them. At the castle, they were greeted by Holy Knight Reigns, who asked them to rest first. All the candidates were pleased and happy to receive royal treatment, from fluffy beds to hot baths and the best food. Kai decided to gather more information but noticed a lot of guards around. He suddenly spotted the knight, giving them a tour. Rez, talking to his soldiers about how he found the candidates stronger than normal kids their age. One soldier expressed worry that allowing the hero candidates into the royal capital would surely provoke the demons. Reigns reassured them not to worry since the candidates were strong enough to handle anything. Kai still had questions, so he planned to visit the town that night. He went to a pub, ordered ale and some snacks, and listened to people discussing how the hero candidates looked just like ordinary kids. He noticed that the locals seemed more afraid of the church than the king or nobles. When he asked the bartender for more information, the bartender said he was new to town and didn't know much. He told Kai about the Demon King and how he was attacking the kingdom, adding that the Demon King could even seduce humans with his overwhelming power. He also mentioned how the Demon King's followers had blown up a noble estate a few days ago. Kai left the pub, pondering how the candidates being in the capital might not be the best thing. Suddenly, Kinzaki approached him, worried for his safety. He explained that he was gathering information since they were in unfamiliar territory. She looked visibly concerned and offered to help, but he refused, which she didn't appreciate. After some banter, he finally agreed to let her assist him, asking her to gather information about the royal capital. She set off to gather intel, and so did Kai, but someone was eavesdropping on their entire conversation. The man smirked when he saw her leave. Kai finally returned to his room after a tiring search, having not found anything important, but at least learned of a new enemy. Suddenly, he heard noises outside his room and found the other candidates gathered in the hall. When he inquired, he discovered Kenzaki was missing. They hadn't even noticed he was gone because he didn't share a room with anyone. When pressed for answers, he denied knowing anything. Shuji concluded that she wasn't in the castle and suggested they should go out and look for her since it was almost dawn. They all spread out to search for her. Kai found Kenzaki's student ID lying in the street. As soon as he picked it up, 4 masked men attacked him. His reflexes kicked in, and he quickly took down 3 of them. He confronted the 4th, demanding to know who he was, as they all seemed like untrained spies. The 4th spy was too stunned to run, and Kai urged him to reveal everything he knew. Meanwhile, in what appeared to be a castle, Kenzaki was tied up, being interrogated by 2 spies. She refused to answer their questions about the hero candidates. Frustrated by her lack of cooperation, one of the spies ripped her shirt off. They had no idea, but Kai was already inside, spying on them. He used his judgment powers and realized they were quite weak. He couldn't believe she was captured by such inept men, so he swiftly killed them. Kenzaki was embarrassed by his sudden appearance in her compromised state. He freed her chains and was about to leave when he sensed someone approaching at full speed. It was Reigns, the Holy Knight, who attacked them without hesitation. They both dodged his strike. Reigns smirked, stating he had to kill them. Being the Holy Knight also meant he was the general of the Demon King's army. Kai remarked that the kingdom was at its end, evidenced by how the capital was full of enemies. Kai used his judgment and recognized that Reigns was a powerful warrior and an all-rounder. They clashed once more. Kai managed to evade his sword, but then Reigns unleashed fire magic, catching Kai off guard. He narrowly dodged again, but then Reigns covered his sword in flames, claiming it was over for Kai. In a split-second decision, Kai pulled out his gun and shot Reigns right in the temple. Reigns fell dead. Kai regretted using his gun for something like this, as his bullets were limited, but he had no choice. He needed to learn how to fight up close if he wanted to survive in that world. Kanzaki was stunned to see a gun with him. remarking on how terrifying it was to learn that someone in the class carried a gun. He explained that it was just standard gear for an assassin. She thanked him, and he asked why she didn't use her domination power, to which she replied that after her hands were chained, she couldn't use her powers. As they were leaving, she told him that those guys were trying to attack everyone in their class, but he already knew this from interrogating the fourth guy he had captured earlier. That guy revealed they were ordered to kill all the hero candidates, and it was him who told her where Kanzaki was located. They wanted to use her as a hostage while attacking the others. What they couldn't wrap their heads around was how he hadn't been killed by the death curse, like how steady he died. This meant it wasn't a demon's doing. Some humans were against them. It was almost morning when Shuji found them, and was relieved to see her safe. Kai filled him in on the Demon King's cult, and how humans were also against humanity. The problem now was that distinguishing friend from foe among humans was tricky, unlike with monsters. This called for extra caution. They chose not to tell Leonora about it because she would just tell them to figure it out themselves. They decided to gather everyone and come up with a plan. Suddenly, smoke surrounded them, and soon, more cult members had them cornered. All of them got ready to fight. It wasn't just these three, but other candidate groups were also being cornered by the men. Kai noticed there were 6 of them, and their stats were clearly lower than Rhine's, but they were still formidable. All 6 men lunged at them. Kanzaki used her powers to stop them, and Kai killed them instantly by piercing their heads with sharp knives. Shuji felt stressed seeing this because, after all, they were humans. He tried to debate about it, but Kai cut him off, saying they were enemies in the end. One cult member left attacked Shuji, who tried to reason with him, but the cult member claimed he was just doing his master's bidding. Kanzaki readied her powers again, but Kai stopped her, insisting that Shuji should be the one to kill the guy. Shuji smashed the man's sword and told him to surrender if he wanted to live, but the guy was too stubborn and attacked Shuji instead, injuring his hand. In retaliation, Shuji slashed his body. The man whimpered, and Shuji thought about leaving him there to die, but Kai urged him to finish the job right then, or the guy could become a threat later. Shuji hesitated, but ultimately did as Kai instructed. Meanwhile, Arashi and his team took down all the other men. The last guy was killed mercilessly by Arashi's power. Rina and the other girls struggled with killing humans, and apart from Rina, the others sustained injuries. Suddenly, Leonora arrived on the scene and asked if she should give them a passing grade. The men grew angrier at the sight of her. She explained that since they were her candidates, it was to be expected that she would come to assist when they were in danger. One of the men scoffed that she didn't even have her knight with her, so how could she help? She taunted them, saying they were just a bunch of amateurs seduced by the Demon King, and didn't think of them as enemies at all. All the men lunged at her simultaneously, and she used her domination powers to pin them all to the ground. The men couldn't budge. Rina noted that her powers were similar to Kanzaki's, but Leonora told her not to compare her powers to something like that. Her domination skill was superior in every regard, from range to strength. Rina asked why she saved them, and Leonora responded that she'd mentioned giving a passing grade. They all thanked her for protecting them, and one man grabbed her dress, pleading for her not to ignore them and to free them. She looked down and apologized for him still being alive. Then, she used her domination power on all the candidates, commanding them to kill the men lying on the floor. Their bodies moved as if on autopilot, and they all killed the men against their will. Such was Leonora's power. Kai and Kanzaki watched this unfold from a distance, with Kanzaki amazed at her ability to control so many at once. Her range and strength were on a completely different level. 12 hours after the attack, all the candidates gathered again in the hall. Many of them looked pretty bad and were in shock. Narumi vowed he wouldn't let her go since she forced all the candidates to kill against their will. Shuji blamed himself for not arriving sooner, but Kai explained it wouldn't have made a difference because none of them was strong enough to resist Leonora. He knew that with the demon army's general defeated, they wouldn't be able to move for a while. He then asked Kanzaki to come with him. She asked why, and he said he needed help from someone with powers like Leonora's to find a way to deal with her domination magic. He then asked her to dominate him with her powers. Hearing this, she blushed and became all flustered. The day after they repelled the cult members, the kingdom held a huge parade celebrating the summoning of the hero candidate Kates. This was proof that the hero candidates displayed their power during their battle against the Demon King's cult, and they were welcomed warmly by the citizens of the royal capital. When all the candidates gathered, Leonora told them she wanted them to return to the Temple City Alpha. Kai clarified that was the city they had been summoned to, and guessed it was under Leonora's control. He asked if she wouldn't be joining them, and she replied that she still had some matters to handle, leaving them all in Gas's care. Rina mentioned they wished to return, but their dorms had burned down. Rina noticed one girl looking pale and unable to answer questions because she was too scared of Leonora. Leonora left, smirking, while all the candidates resented her. Soon, Gas took all the candidates with him toward their destination. That night, they camped, and Arashi and the others ventured back into the forest. Kanzaki asked Kai if they were really going to do it that night, and he replied that Leonora wasn't around and all the soldiers were weaklings, making it the best opportunity to kill Gia. Given these conditions, he saw no reason to stop them and planned to enjoy the show. Meanwhile, Narumi led Gas deep into the forest, claiming to have seen a giant monster. Gas fell for his trap because the road led to the royal capital, and a monster lurking around there was dangerous. Suddenly, Arashi attacked Gas from behind with full power. Gas wasn't expecting the assault and took the hit, beginning to bleed. Arashi told him that even his best attack couldn't kill him, but Gas lost his footing and stepped on a landmine, which exploded. Arashi smiled and revealed that it was all a trap set for him. Gas used mana to defend himself, but still sustained serious injuries. Gas expressed his disappointment, stating he never expected Arashi to ambush him. Suddenly, the other members of Arashi's group surrounded the old man. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Gas shot a light ball into the sky, which functioned like a firework. Hinaki and Kai observed this from a distance, with Kai commenting on how Arashi had messed up because the light ball was a distress signal visible to the soldiers who started heading in that direction. They couldn't reach the location since Kai blocked their path and took them out. Meanwhile, Gas was struggling against the candidates. He could barely keep up with their powers, and soon he lost an arm, bleeding profusely. Arashi complimented him on his toughness for his age. Narumi informed everyone about the distress signal, saying he tried to buy some time, but Gas insisted it was no longer necessary. Leonora entered with her usual smile, noting how cornered Gas had become. The candidates were shocked to see her. At the same time, Shuji, Reina, and the other candidates noticed Kanzaki using her domination power to bind some soldiers. She claimed to be following orders, but they didn't buy it since she wasn't the type to take orders. Kai stepped in, confirming she was following his orders. Shuji was stunned to hear that Kai had killed the guards. He explained that Arashi was busy fighting Gas, so he took care of the guards. Having pieced things together, Shuji asked Kai if he teamed up with Arashi. Kai replied that he was just doing what he wanted. He advised that instead of bothering him, he should be looking for Arashi. Shuji and the others departed to find Arashi. Leonora informed Gas that he was losing, which he accepted, admitting he couldn't fight his old age. Arashi declared he wasn't going to run away, tucking his tail between his legs after everything that had happened. One of the candidates asked if she wasn't the one controlling them, to which Leonora replied that other conditions were also needed for control. If they had a large mana pool, resisting her would be effective, but for those who relied solely on their powers and were unaccustomed to controlling their mana, it was easy for her to dominate them. Arashi branded her a coward and challenged her to face them head-on. She smiled back, assuring him she would deal with them herself, and added that she would break his fangs. As Arashi leaped at her, she quickly summoned a massive boulder and sent him flying. She then manipulated elements like fire, water, and air to take down the other candidates. Narumi scooped up Arashi and flew into the sky just as Shuji and the other candidates arrived. He urged Arashi to stop fighting and questioned what he hoped to gain from it. Arashi told him to try and stop him with his strength if he wished, revealing his disdain for Shuji's pacifistic approach. Shuji asked the others if they felt the same, and Reina stood up in support of Arashi. Leonora laughed, mocking them for still bickering amongst themselves. She told them they were on the cusp of starting a rebellion, and questioned if they expected her to forgive them, even if they halted it at that moment. She then conjured a colossal cyclone that injured everyone. Shuji, feeling the tension as everyone was hurt, was calmed by Arashi's reassurance that if he wanted to protect everyone, he had to steel himself, or they would all be dead. Understanding the situation, Shuji readied himself to fight, as did Reina and the others. Leonora declared she would show them the difference between their powers and hers. Not far away, Kanzaki asked Kai what their next move should be. He instructed her to trust the other candidates, until Leonora used her magic to enslave them. Seemingly trapped, the candidates readied themselves to confront Leonora. Gas got back up, claiming he was weak, but determined to fight for her. Leonora healed all his wounds, restoring him to prime fighting condition. The candidates were now scared since they had gone to great lengths to corner Gas, and here he was again. Reina reminded them that their numbers had increased, which should help. Leonora taunted them to attack her whenever they wanted, framing the battle as a test for them. She added that if they couldn't defeat her, they wouldn't qualify to be heroes. Soon enough, the battle commenced, and Gas found it challenging to combat Shuji and his magical sword. Leonora attacked Shuji with water magic, but Reina negated it, though Shuji still sustained injuries from the attack. The candidates rallied against Leonora, but none of their strikes could even scratch her. Meanwhile, Kai hid in the shadows, using his judgment to assess Leonora's stats. Despite her prowess as a magician, he noticed her defense was weak. Solid physical attack would suffice, yet gas stood in their way. Arashi told Shuji to leave gas to him and focus on taking down Leonora. However, Shuji faced a problem. His magic couldn't affect her either. A fellow candidate handed him a steel sword, and Leonora remarked that he finally looked ready for combat. The other candidates couldn't assist Shuji because their abilities didn't work against her, nor could they help Arashi, who was locked in close combat. Arashi managed to hold his ground against Gas, as even though Gas was healed, his stamina was still low, and he couldn't unleash his explosive power. It was an even match. Leonora used ranged attacks against Shuji to prevent him from getting close, but he needed to figure out how to close the distance and take her down. She smiled, acknowledging his efforts, noting that only a few individuals in the country could dodge her attacks. Nevertheless, it remained a one-sided brawl since he was still too far away. Shuji dashed toward her at full speed, managing to evade her wind attacks. She unleashed ground and fire attacks, but he dodged them. She realized he was unconsciously using magic as armor, indicating he was growing stronger in a short time. This made her a bit apprehensive, but she still managed to throw him back with her powers. Meanwhile, Arashi couldn't count on his powers any longer and was left contemplating how to defeat Gas. In one swift move, Gas slashed across Arashi's abdomen. Frustrated at himself for not besting an old man, Arashi knelt on the ground. Gas taunted him, claiming this was as far as he could go without his abilities. Refusing to accept defeat, Arashi declared he was destined for strength and hit Gas with such force that the old man collapsed on the ground, bleeding again. Meanwhile, Shuji understood he had to win, otherwise his friends would suffer. Rising to his feet, a menacing aura enveloped him. Leonora noted his remarkable stamina, but maintained her relaxed demeanor, knowing he couldn't approach her. She was wrong, as in the blink of an eye, Shuji stood right in front of her, managing to slash her hand. It was unfathomable to her, but she had no time to ponder, as Shuji was now behind her. She utilized her water powers to shove him away, yet he quickly utilized his newfound power and was just an inch from slicing her neck when, out of nowhere, she commanded him to kneel. He found himself immobilized as she smiled, stating she didn't want to resort to it, but there was no other option. Kai noticed that she had finally used her trump card and asked Kinzaki to move. Leonora smirked. She didn't expect to use enslaving magic, but Shuji made her do it. He lay at her feet like a statue. Other candidates rushed to save Shuji, but Leonora commanded them to stay still, and they all froze midway. She told them they did a good job and that she would give them a passing grade. She added that she didn't expect Gas to lose, but after all, he was just a knight and could be replaced as long as she controlled them. It wouldn't be a problem. The candidates were losing hope, and if they didn't have any countermeasures, they would surely lose. She told them that the reason they allowed her to summon the candidates was so she could control them freely when the time came. Otherwise, they would become threats. Suddenly, 3 knives attacked her from behind, but she dodged them easily and said she knew he was hiding the whole time. It was Kai, and he replied that he was surprised she paid attention to someone as ordinary as him. She said from the beginning there was something odd about him and that she was disappointed he would show up to a losing battle like that. She ordered him not to move, and he too was under her spell. As she explained her magic, a bullet hit her shoulder. She was surprised he could move and fire even under her spell. She asked him how he managed to do that, as she was sure her magic was affecting him. He shot her again, this time in the abdomen, and she couldn't understand what weapon he was using, since guns didn't exist in her world. Her defense couldn't keep up. He explained to her what a gun was, and mentioned he had a few bullets he didn't want to waste. She used her firepower, but only hit his robe, and he was gone. The next second, he stood right behind her with his gun aimed at her head. He said he knew she wasn't a good close-range fighter and that her enslaving magic didn't work on him either. She was shocked and in denial. Kai had taken a gamble and won. The reason was Kinzaki. That night, when he asked Kinzaki to dominate him, he explained that the skill cast first would have priority over any new skills. This meant if she used her domination power on him first, it would negate the enslaving magic. Since candidates had divine protection, their powers were superior to magic. Kinzaki was doubtful because her skill was weaker than Leonora's magic. The same thing happened with Steady. Since he had cast his spell before her, he regained control over his monsters. It was a gamble, but they had no other options. In the present, Leonora realized it must be Kinzaki, and she was right. As Kai was under her spell, he told her it was her end and was about to pull the trigger. Leonora was captured and handcuffed. The handcuffs sealed her magic and were the same ones previously used on Kenzaki. She asked Kai what he was planning to do with her. His demand was simple. If she sent them back, he would release her. She apologized, saying it was impossible for her, as all she could do was summon magic to send them back. A different kind of magic was needed. Kai knew she wasn't lying because she had no skills to send them back. He asked her how she was supposed to do that after defeating the Demon King. She explained that summoning required a massive amount of energy, so they relied on their lord. In other words, it was the lord who had summoned them. Once they defeated the Demon King, the lord himself would send them back, but she didn't sound sure about it. No previous candidates were ever sent back because they had been killed by the Demon King. There might be some survivors, but they went missing. After a short conversation, Kai was ready to kill her, but Shuji stopped him. Shuji said he was cooperating only because he thought Leonora could send them back, but since she couldn't, he wanted to keep his status as a hero candidate. He didn't want to become a traitor in that world. Kai asked if they weren't already traitors. Leonora assured him she would pretend nothing happened that night. Shuji said that killing a saintess was a heavy crime, and they could get in trouble for it. The other candidates agreed. Narumi was still on Kai's side. Shuji agreed that killing her was the sensible move, but what would they do after? Kai understood Shuji's viewpoint, but in an unexpected turn of events, he shot Leonora right between the eyes. Everyone was shocked to see her body fall to the ground. Kai then used his smoke grenade and disappeared. The candidates were unhappy with his decision and actions. Kenzaki thought it really came down to what he had planned a few hours ago when Kai and Kenzaki were strategizing. He told her the first objective was to capture Leonora and find a way back home, but if that was impossible, he would kill her. He knew that if he captured her and they couldn't return to their world, Shuji would try to protect her, and at that point, he would kill her and run away. He planned to bear the sin of killing the saintess alone. He explained that was why he left a few of her guards alive, so they could put the blame on him. He told her to shift all the blame onto him and return to the Empire. She wasn't sure she could do it, but he urged her that she could, and she might even use her powers during negotiations to make it work. She asked him where he would run away to, and he told her not to worry about him. Meanwhile, far away in a dark castle, a man was updating the Demon King about his failed attempt to kill the hero candidates. The Demon King told him not to worry, as eventually the hero candidates would definitely show up at the front line. The game was getting interesting, and the Demon King enjoyed it. 2 days after the incident, Kai was living in the forest near a city, which would take him half a day to reach by foot. Since there was no chance he would be allowed entry after killing the saintess, he decided to sneak in at night. He needed to earn some money and saw a tavern. Inside, there was a lovely atmosphere, and someone asked where he was from. He lied, saying he was from a nearby town and was looking for a job. The man advised him to be an adventurer, which would involve taking jobs from the guild and getting paid for it. He also mentioned that the guild was in desperate need of new adventurers, so they wouldn't even ask for identification. He stayed at an inn, and thankfully no one recognized him. After that, he went to the guild in that town and saw all kinds of people there. He approached the reception counter and got himself registered. He was asked about his name, age, and origin, so he used the false name Siren and lied that the Demon King's army had destroyed his town. Siren was the same codename he had used in the real world too. The receptionist explained how the guild worked. There were ranks from A to F, with higher ranks yielding higher rewards. Since he was new, he was registered as an F-rank adventurer. He then went to the bulletin board to take his first task, and soon 3 guys came to pick on him. They were making fun of him, and he really didn't like it. The last time we saw, Aragi Kai was surrounded by some adventurers who asked him not to take the quest. Aragi Kai calmly turned around, thanked them for the warning, and asked them to leave him alone. Hearing this, the boys got frustrated, thinking that Aragi Kai was very cocky. Seeing them surround him, people murmured that those guys were picking a fight with a newbie again. One of the boys tried to attack Aragi Kai, shouting that he needed a lesson, but to his surprise, Aragi Kai blocked the attack by grabbing his hand. The boy was shocked and shouted at Aragi Kai to let go of his hand. Aragi Kai calmly released it because he didn't want to fight. However, the boy then told his partners to attack Aragi Kai together and teach him a lesson. They all tried to attack together, but Aragi Kai easily defeated them and calmly left the guild. As he was leaving, he thought to himself that at least he now knew the level of the average adventurers in the guild. Compared to hero candidates, they were surprisingly weak, so he decided to finish the quest as quickly as he could. The scene then shifted to the forest, where Aragi Kai thought that according to the quest's information, the kobolds should be nearby. Suddenly, he noticed animal-like footprints on the ground. Aragi Kai followed them, and as he went further, he sensed that someone was around him, and there was more than one. Aragi Kai also noticed that the mysterious creatures were good at hiding, making him suspect they were kobolds. Out of nowhere, a kobold came up from behind and launched a sneak attack, but Aragi Kai sensed it and easily dodged. He also noticed that the kobold had a human sword in its hand, meaning it had probably defeated an adventurer. While he was thinking, another kobold came from behind and tried to attack. This time, Aragi Kai dodged and picked up some dust from the ground, throwing it into the kobold's eyes. While the second kobold was blinded, Aragi Kai struck the first kobold in the face. As it fell to the ground, he grabbed the sword and swiftly finished it off. Seeing this, the second kobold was shocked, but before it could react, Aragi Kai attacked and swiftly dispatched it with a knife as well. Aragi Kai then used his judgment skill to check the stats of the kobold and realized that these creatures posed no threat to him. Feeling confident, he decided he could easily hunt them down for more money. After some time, the scene shifted to the guild, where everyone was looking at Aragi Kai in shock. Aragi Kai had brought the kobold's ears as proof of his subjugation. He asked Mia, the receptionist, if it was enough. She responded affirmatively and asked if he was sure he really did it alone. Aragi Kai responded with a yes, explaining that hunting kobolds was easy, but finding them had been the challenging part. He reflected on how, even though he had the skill to fight them, his exploration skill was still lacking. Upon seeing Aragi Kai return after defeating the kobolds, people around him were shocked and asked if kobold hunting was such an easy feat, speculating that Aragi Kai might have been a C-rank hunter from somewhere else. However, someone mentioned they had heard Aragi Kai was still a newbie. Mia interrupted, asking Aragi Kai to wait while she went inside to prepare his reward. The scene then shifted to nighttime, where Aragi Kai was walking somewhere, counting his money. He wondered how he could earn so much by hunting those weak magic beasts, realizing that for now, securing funds for living was more important, so he decided to stay in the city and earn money as an adventurer. Aragi Kai thought that building a network around the guild would help him gather information easily. Suddenly, someone appeared in front of him. Seeing the boy, Aragi Kai asked if he had any business with him, noting that the boy seemed much stronger than those he fought at the guild. The boy introduced himself as Lyle, a B-rank adventurer and the person in charge of the guild branch in the city. Aragi Kai responded with a casual, "So what?" Lyle then asked Aragi Kai if he was the same person who had caused trouble for his men earlier that day at the guild. Aragi Kai responded that those boys were the ones who started the altercation first. In response, Lyle furiously shouted at Aragi Kai, asking him not to lie, as he had heard that an unknown newbie had beaten up his men. Aragi Kai then admitted that yes, he was the one who had beaten them. Hearing this, Lyle shouted that if that was the case, he wouldn't hesitate to teach Aragi Kai a lesson. Lyle then attempted to punch Aragi Kai several times, but to his frustration, Aragi Kai easily dodged every attack. Finally, Aragi Kai got bored and used his legs to trip Lyle, causing him to fall to the ground. Seeing this, Lyle was stunned and exclaimed, "What?" Aragi Kai then remarked to Lyle that his speed was impressive but unrefined, and that his movements were too big, leaving openings. Hearing this, Lyle became furious and tried to attack again, demanding to know what Aragi Kai had said. Aragi Kai once more blocked his attack by grabbing his hand and then swiftly slammed him to the ground. Aragi Kai explained that he believed Lyle wasn't accustomed to fighting against humans because his quests usually involved magical beasts. In response, Lyle angrily asked why Aragi Kai had attacked his men if he had so much power. Aragi Kai responded that he had already explained it was a misunderstanding and offered to clarify everything from the beginning. Sometime later, the scene shifted to the guild, where Lyle apologized to Aragi Kai, admitting it was his fault. Lyle even scolded and punished his own men for lying to him, acknowledging that it was his fault for not doubting their words. He shouted at his men, demanding that they apologize to Aragi Kai. They reluctantly apologized after Lyle insisted. Aragi Kai responded that as long as the misunderstanding was resolved, he didn't mind. He then mentioned that he had a question to ask. Lyle apologized again and assured Aragi Kai that he would gladly answer any questions he had. Aragi Kai then explained that he was a traveler and had registered as an adventurer to earn funds for his travels. Aragi Kai continued mentioning that he had another reason for registering as an adventurer. Curious, Lyle asked Aragi Kai what he wanted, considering his formidable power and unknown circumstances. Aragi Kai responded that he was looking for a way to travel to another world. Upon hearing this, Lyle and his men were stunned and asked him to clarify. They wondered aloud whether such a thing was possible. One of them speculated that he had heard hero candidates came from another world. Aragi Kai confirmed he was indeed talking about finding a way to enter the world of those hero candidates. Liao responded, speculating that if that were the case, it likely involved magic, and they weren't particularly familiar with magic themselves. Aragi Kai acknowledged that such information wouldn't be easy to come by, and hoped that Liao and his group might have some clue. Liao said there was probably only one person who could provide clues, namely the sage Elbenket. Aragi Kai asked in confusion who Elbenket was. Liao was surprised, and asked Aragi Kai how he didn't know, explaining that Elbenket was an elf whose advice had greatly helped the country. Upon hearing this, Aragi Kai recalled having heard about Elbenket somewhere and asked if it was true. He then remembered reading about an elven sage in books, before remembering that elves were known to live deep in forests. He explained that elves were now rare, with their stories considered legends, and they seldom left their forests to explore the outside world. Aragi Kai concluded that the elf who ventured outside their forest and gained wisdom became known as a sage. Liao added that he had heard Elbenket had been alive for over 100 years and was renowned for possessing great wisdom and knowledge. Liao also mentioned that Elbenket was a well-known spellcaster with extensive knowledge of spells. Upon hearing this, Aragi Kai wondered if elves were known for their strong affinity with spirits, which helped them master magic. He also considered that even if there wasn't a specific spell to send heroes back to their home world, perhaps with the right spells, they could achieve it. Liao's underling, Raka, interrupted, asking if the sage Elbenket was still alive, mentioning he had never heard of Elbenket and noting that no one had ever seen Elbenket. Liao laughed and replied he didn't have information about that. He then apologized to Aragi Kai for not providing any useful information. Aragi Kai reassured him that the information was indeed useful enough for him. He then mentioned that it was getting late, so he was heading back to the inn. Upon hearing this, Liao expressed his curiosity, asking Aragi Kai what he planned to do after discovering a way to travel to another world. Aragi Kai smiled and cryptically responded that he would leave that to their imaginations. Confused, they watched as Aragi Kai left for the inn. The scene then shifted to 1 week later at the guild, where Mia was giving Aragi Kai his reward for completing the quest. After taking the reward and walking outside the guild, Aragi Kai reflected on how it had already been a week since the incident with Liao and his group. During that time, he had managed to save up some money. Suddenly, Liao and Raka approached Aragi Kai and asked if his quest had been completed, suggesting they go for a drink together. Aragi Kai responded with a strange, somewhat sad look and declined their invitation. Seeing this, Liao remarked that Aragi Kai was very boring, and they bid him goodbye. While walking on the road, Aragi Kai reflected on how he had finally gathered some information about the sage. He shared that the sage's name was Elben Auret, and that about a decade ago, Elben Auret had served as the country's advisor. Now retired, Elben Auret was said to be living near the western border, the place where the country was fighting against the Demon King's army. Aragi Kai then concluded that there was no reason for him to stay in the city any longer, deciding he should go visit the so-called sage Elben Auret. The scene then shifted to the Holy Temple City Alpha, where the hero candidates were having a meeting with someone. Heinrich, the captain of the Holy Knight's 8th Knight Corps, mentioned that it had been a month since he took on the responsibility of overseeing the hero candidates, replacing the duties of the fallen saintess. He asked Midu Shuji if he had any complaints so far. Midu Shuji responded with a no, indicating that everything was fine because Heinrich was doing a good job. Heinrich expressed his happiness upon hearing those words, stating that the hero candidates were valuable assets to the country, and he treated them with respect accordingly. Hashimoto Murray thanked Heinrich for his concern, but couldn't help but feel that he was different from Leonora. Despite this, she sensed something fishy about the situation. Heinrich then directed them to focus on the main topic, mentioning that during the previous day's meeting, it had been decided to mobilize the hero candidates. Midu Shuji was surprised and asked if he interpreted correctly that they were being sent to the front line. Heinrich responded with a yes, confirming that the hero candidates were indeed being sent to the front line. He explained that there were still battles ongoing at the western border. Heinrich then showed them a map and explained that they would be mobilized to a fort on the front line. Midu Shuji responded that he understood and was about to ask about the promise when Heinrich interrupted, stating that he would fulfill his promise to protect those who were not suitable for battle. Midu Shuji gratefully thanked Heinrich for his assurance. Heinrich then explained that he would assign them some tasks in the meantime, emphasizing the need for everyone to contribute to earn their keep. Midu Shuji agreed, seeing the practical benefits of having work. Hashimoto asked when they needed to leave. Heinrich responded urgently, suggesting they depart the following morning. He also asked Midoshuji to inform everyone and ensure they were prepared for the journey. After leaving the hall, as Midoshuji and Hashimoto Murray walked back, Hashimoto Murray expressed her relief that Heinrich had accepted their request. Midoshuji agreed, admitting he had initially worried their demands were too much, but was glad everything had worked out in the end. Hashimoto speculated that the knights lacked confidence in controlling the hero candidates without Leonora, which might explain their modesty. Midoshuji agreed, noting that with Leonora gone, the knights would be on high alert. Hashimoto Murray then wondered about Aragi Kai, pondering where he had gone and what he was currently doing. The scene then shifted to the past when Leonora was killed, and Aragi Kai left the hero candidates. The bishop asked tensely who could have killed Leonora. Nagasena responded that the culprit was Aragi Kai, revealing that he was one of the hero candidates. Hearing this, the bishop and his guards were shocked. The bishop urgently asked about Aragi Kai's whereabouts. Nagasena responded that Aragi Kai had run away, noting that he was surprisingly fast for a traitor, and the guards began discussing among themselves, debating whether they should send an inquisitor immediately if Aragi Kai's betrayal was confirmed, or if they should first verify whether Saintess Leonora had truly been killed. Arashi Shinuka furiously asked the bishop to clarify what he had just said. The bishop clarified that he wasn't outright denying the story, but suggested there was a possibility that all the hero candidates had conspired together to eliminate Leonora. At that moment, Midoshuji became tense. To everyone's surprise, Leonora's knight stepped forward and explained that he had witnessed the incident. He revealed that Midoshuji and the others standing there had indeed been trying to protect the Saintess, but were overwhelmed by Aragi Kai, resulting in Leonora's demise. The other knight also agreed with this account, prompting the bishop to state that he could believe it if her own knights were confirming the story. He then inquired about Aragi Kai's strength, asking if he was truly that formidable. Muji confirmed, saying yes, explaining that Aragi Kai had been hiding his true power all along. The bishop then invited them to have a more detailed conversation in his chamber, and requested one of the hero candidates to accompany him. Unbeknownst to them, Kanzaki Ren was secretly eavesdropping from behind a wall using her abilities. On the knights, Midoshuji felt relieved that they had managed to navigate the situation with Kanzaki Ren's assistance. The scene returned to the present time, where Hashimoto Murray asked Midoshuji if he was still worried about Aragi Kai, suggesting it was pointless to be concerned. Midoshuji smiled and agreed outwardly, but admitted that deep down he was troubled because he knew Aragi Kai had sacrificed himself for their sake. Midoshuji was tense because he had resolved to protect everyone, but Aragi Kai had taken that burden upon himself, leaving Midoshuji feeling powerless to help Aragi. In the room, Midoshuji gathered everyone and announced that they had been ordered to mobilize to the front line. He instructed all combat-ready personnel to prepare to depart by the next morning. Some of the boys became tense as the reality of facing a real battle set in. Nagase approached them and remarked that it was too late for them to be afraid, reminding them that they had willingly chosen to join the combat group. Host Shiori asked if they weren't the only ones being sent to the front line. Midoshuji responded that they were being sent together with the 8th Night Corps under the command of Captain Heiner. Taki-Rin asked Midoshuji if there was any news about Aragi Kai. Midoshuji explained that the temple had placed a bounty on Aragi Kai's head and had deployed a significant number of personnel to track him down. He added that there had been no news regarding Aragi Kai's whereabouts. Hearing this, Kakarin became visibly sad. Midoshuji was about to console her, but before he could, Nagasena angrily shouted that she didn't care whether Aragi was a traitor or not. If she found him, she would burn him to a crisp. Kanzaki Rin, feeling deeply upset, wondered why Aragi Kai hadn't taken her with him. The scene then shifted to the jungle where all the hero candidates and knights, along with the guards, were traveling. As they went further, Arashi Shanuk sensed something and stopped. At that moment, Hano Shiori also shouted that she was tired and asked if they could take a break. Hashimoto Mar responded that they just had a lunch break, so it's not possible. It seemed they were going to walk until dark. Some boys were wondering if anything would happen since they had been walking for the past 2 days without anything happening. Arashi Shanuk asked everyone to stop, and they asked if something was wrong. Arashi Shanuk responded that he could sense the presence of a magical beast behind the bushes. A knight arrived and shouted at the hero candidates, asking why they stopped suddenly. Midoshuji explained that they sensed the presence of a magical beast nearby. The knight shouted that he couldn't see anything and reminded them that they must follow his orders, as they can't do anything without his permission. Hearing this, Arashi Shanuk got furious, grabbed the knight by the neck, and demanded to know what he said. The knight, scared and tense, asked Arashi Shanuk what he was doing. Even Midoshuji urged Arashi Shanuk to stop. Arashi Shanuk furiously shouted, asking why he should follow any orders from a worthless knight. Suddenly, something attacked Arashi Shanuk, forcing him to release the knight to dodge. It was a magical beast with a rabbit face but weaponized hands. The guards got tense and announced that it was a sharp rabbit, urging everyone to prepare for battle. Before the guards could act, the sharp rabbits charged at them, knocking their swords away. One of the sharp rabbits glared furiously at a guard ready to strike, but before it could harm him, a strong flame came out of nowhere and wiped out the sharp rabbit. It was Arashi Shanuk, who used his power to defeat the beast. The guard thanked Arashi Shanuk for saving him, but Arashi Shanuk told the guard to step aside and not get in his way. Arashi Shanuk then proceeded to easily defeat each of the sharp rabbits one by one. Some students were amazed to see Arashi Shanuk's power, as it was far more destructive than they had seen before, but Arashi Shanuk wasn't satisfied, feeling that his power still wasn't enough compared to Aragi Kai's. The scene then shifted to a moment when Aragi Kai had aimed a gun at Leonora. Arashi Shanuk became furious upon seeing Aragi Kai once again. Arashi Shanuk was actually frustrated because from the beginning, Aragi Kai had shown no fear towards him, indicating that Aragi Kai was definitely stronger. Aragi Kai's lack of reaction only reinforced this belief for Arashi Shanuk. Arashi Shanuk then shared that with the explosive power he received, he thought he was stronger, but it was very annoying for him to realize that Aragi Kai was even stronger. The scene then shifts to the present where Midu Shuji interrupts Arashi Shanuk's thoughts, asking what happened to him as he seemed to be in a bad mood. Arashi Shanuk responds that it's nothing, but he doesn't like being ordered around by someone he considers worthless. Sometime later, the scene shifted to the western border of Digest Holy Kingdom at Fort Truss. Initially, Captain Amelia of the Holy Knights introduced herself as the leader of the Knight Order stationed there. Henrik asked Amelia what happened to the watchdog. Captain Amelia responded that he died around a week ago. Upon hearing this, the hero candidates were a little shocked. Amelia then mentioned that she wanted to let them rest first after their long trip, but she couldn't finish her sentence. The guards interrupted, shouting that the army of the Demon King was coming to attack. Amelia cheerfully remarked that since they all heard, there was no time for rest, so she was counting on them. Midu Shuji agreed and instructed every hero candidate to prepare for battle. Arashi Shanuk appeared very determined and ready for the upcoming fight. The guards rang the alert bell, shouting that the demon army was approaching. The quantity of monsters was large, which stunned Max and made him wonder why there were so many monsters. Henrik instructed the guards to start firing and reduce the number of monsters before they got closer. The guards began shooting arrows, while the fire ability knights also hurled fireballs at them. Despite all the fireballs and arrows hitting the monsters, they continued moving forward, proclaiming their intent to destroy the humans. Midu Shuji was shocked to see that the monsters were not retreating despite taking heavy hits. Amelia explained that the monsters wouldn't be easily defeated by just those attacks. She warned the hero candidates not to underestimate the monsters' endurance and stamina, emphasizing that humans were much weaker in comparison. Midu Shuji tensely asked Amelia what they should do. Amelia instructed Midu Shuji to follow Heinrich's orders and commands, stating that she would lead the Fourth Order Knights to fight the monsters herself. Heinrich explained that he had intended to say the same thing, but some individuals were already down fighting the monsters. Midu Shuji, confused, asked Heinrich whom he was referring to. Naga's Reina informed Midu Shuji that Heinrich was talking about Arashi Shanuk and his group, as they had already gone down earlier. Midu Shuji was stunned and asked Naga's Reina to repeat what she had just said. When the smoke cleared, they saw that humans had come to confront them directly. The monsters laughed at Arashi, Shun, Shook, and the others, mocking them as fools who had come to meet their deaths. Arashi Shuki replied that he didn't care if they were demons or anything else. He would simply erase the monsters from existence. The fight began between them inside the fort. Some monsters broke through a wall and attacked the guards. As a monster was about to strike down a guard, Midu Shuji intervened, blocking the attack with his sword. Even the guard was surprised to see Midu Shuji. He then unleashed his more powerful attack, Sword Extend, and swiftly defeated the monster. Afterward, Midu Shuji felt confident that he could handle it. Realizing his power was continuing to grow, he shouted, filled with enthusiasm for the fight, reminding himself not to hesitate, knowing that any sign of hesitation would unsettle the rest of the team as their leader. He reflected on how Arik Kai taught him the cost of his naivety. Hashimoto urged everyone to stop watching and join Midu Shuji in the fight. Nagasa began using his attacks, and Kanakin started dominating the monsters. The battle continued between the monsters and the hero candidates. Seeing the hero candidates fighting, the guards were amazed by their power as they dominated the Demon King's army. Henrik shouted, instructing the guards to cover the hero candidates so they could push the demons back. They agreed and charged forward, engaging in a long battle until finally defeating the Demon King's army. Amelia joyfully announced their victory, and the guards began celebrating as the sunset approached. However, Midu Shuji remained lost in deep thought. He was interrupted by Henrik, who asked if it was his first time fighting like that and how he felt about it. Midoshuji responded that it was challenging to learn how to handle battles at such a large scale. He explained that during the battle, his perspective narrowed, making it hard for him to give orders effectively. Hinrik praised Midoshuji for his efforts and credited the hero candidates for their role in winning the battle. However, he cautioned them to remain vigilant because, although they had faced mid-ranked enemies with relatively small numbers, the high-ranking demons would pose a different challenge due to their superior capabilities. Midoshuji, upon hearing Hinrik's warning, became serious and assured him that he would remember it. The scene shifted to the demon den, where a monster was reporting the battle to Stone Gaia, one of the 4 heavenly kings of the Demon King's army. The monster apologized for failing to fulfill his duties, which greatly angered Stone Gaia. The scene then moved to the great forest of Ioti, where Aragi Kai was traveling. As he neared the edge of the forest, he reflected that his journey to visit the sage should also be ending soon. Suddenly, out of nowhere, Aragi Kai felt something coming toward him, tongues aimed at hitting him. He managed to dodge them, noticing their incredible speed, and wondered what kind of tongues they were. As he looked around more carefully, Aragi Kai spotted some new magical beasts. Upon scanning them, his system identified them as tongue baboons. After checking their status, Aragi Kai concluded that they were somewhat mediocre creatures. The tongue baboons attacked Aragi Kai again, but he easily dodged their assault, realizing they were closing in fast. Aragi Kai swiftly displayed his agility by jumping away to avoid their attacks. The tongue baboons attacked again with their tongues, but this time, Aragi Kai swiftly drew his knife and cut through the tongue in the middle. The tongue baboons were shocked by this move, and Aragi Kai continued cutting until he severed the entire tongue from their mouths. One baboon attempted to attack with its tail, but it was too slow for Aragi Kai, who dodged it easily and swiftly defeated the creature. Witnessing this, the other baboons became stunned and tense, unsure of what to do next. Aragi Kai, now furious, challenged them, asking if they were coming to him or if he would have to come to them and deliver their demise. The scene then shifted to some time later, with the corpses of the tongue baboons lying on the ground. Aragi Kai pondered that more powerful magical beasts seemed to be appearing gradually, wondering if it was because he was getting closer to the Demon King's territory, or perhaps because the forest was distant from cities where knights and adventurers were plentiful. As he ventured deeper, Aragi Kai thought that the further he went, the greater the likelihood of encountering powerful magical beasts, untouched by humans. He was grateful that his appraisal skill allowed him to spot some of these beasts, so he decided to remain vigilant for the future. The scene then shifted to some time later, where Aragi Kai finally reached Mount Urano, a natural defense barrier that slowed down the invasion of the Demon King's army. Aragi Kai then explained that the highest peak is called Reaper Wolf Mountain, and that there's a rumor that Sage Alb lives at the peak of that mountain. He tried to recall if he remembered correctly that there should be a small village at the bottom of Reaper Wolf Mountain. When Aragi Kai reached the village, he was shocked to see the entire village on fire. He wondered if the village had been attacked by the Demon King's army. As Aragi Kai suspected, the village had indeed been attacked, with monsters standing in it. He watched them from the rooftop of a house, hidden from view. Aragi Kai thought that this place was supposed to be far from the front lines, so he resolved to be more cautious. The monsters asked their leader, named Hector, what they should do, suggesting that massacring the humans should be acceptable. Hector instructed them to cease the massacre and suggested enslaving the humans instead. He then asked if they had gathered any information about Elon, a carrot. The monster confirmed this, stating that the sage resides at the top of Reaper Wolf Mountain. Upon hearing this, Hector became frustrated that their intel was correct, which annoyed him greatly. He emphasized that their top priority was Elon Oret, the sage. Hector instructed the monsters to rest in the village for the night and then prepare to climb Reaper Wolf Mountain the next day. A tense monster voiced concern, mentioning that Reaper Wolf Mountain is known to be the nesting grounds of the Reaper Wolfen, which are untamable beasts. They believed that unless they defeated the Reaper Wolfen, they wouldn't be able to reach their objective. The second monster questioned the reason behind the first monster's statement. The first monster explained that domination magic doesn't work on highly intelligent magical beasts. In addition, he mentioned that while the 4 heavenly kings had managed to tame a dragon, taming the Reaper Wolfen would be impossible for them. Hector added that he wasn't particularly skilled in magic, so discussing abilities they didn't have seemed pointless. Their only viable option was to defeat the untamable magical beast. The other monsters agreed with Hector's assessment. Seeing this, Aragi Kai concluded that the entire group was well organized under Hector's command and wondered if this structure was influenced by the high-ranking demon. When Aragi Kai checked Hector's status, he learned that Hector was one of the very few high-ranking demons in the Demon King's army. Realizing this, Aragi Kai understood that confronting Hector directly in battle would be extremely challenging. challenging. Suddenly, Hector felt that someone was watching him, so he instructed one of the monsters to go investigate, sensing that someone was lurking around. Aragi was impressed by Hector's keen senses. The monsters were searching for Aragi Kai, but he was relieved because he was skilled at hiding. Suddenly, he noticed that some humans had been captured by the monsters. They were all tied up with ropes. Despite seeing the captured villagers, Aragi Kai decided not to interfere, as his main objective, like the demons, was to find and meet the sage Albano Carrot. He knew he had to climb the mountain ahead of the Demon King's army. The scene shifted to the highest peak of Yorugo Mountain, a dangerous area also known as Reaper Wolf Mountain. Aragi had somehow climbed to this point. When he checked the map, it showed no established trail, so he decided to follow the paths used by wild beasts. He also noticed his vision was unclear, and the ground seemed unstable. Despite being in a hurry, he chose to proceed with caution. As Aragi moved further, he sensed someone nearby and thought it might be the rumored wolfen of Reaper Wolf Mountain. Listening closely, he discerned not one, but two, no three distinct sounds gradually increasing in number. Aragi realized that even though the wolves were hidden, their presence was overwhelming. Suddenly, he found himself surrounded by the wolves on all sides. They were about to attack him, but he quickly jumped up and perched himself on a nearby tree. Aragi was stunned to discover why so many people had gone missing on the mountain. He used his appraisal skill to assess the status of the wolves. Upon checking, he found their status to be average, with their main strength lying in their coordination. While Aragi assessed their status, one wolfen charged toward the tree and broke it in half. Aragi knew he had to act quickly, so he grabbed a leaf, infused it with mana, and then used it to attack the wolfen. Within seconds, the wolfen died after being cut in half. More wolfen tried to attack Aragi, but each time, he used the leaf to take them down. Two more went down in the same manner. Now, a group of 5 or 6 wolfen was approaching to attack together, so this time Aragi infused mana into his own body. He believed that if he did it consciously, the effect would be significant. He thought this because Leonora had once mentioned that those who relied on divine protection often had weak control over their mana. He remembered her words, where she said those who constantly relied on divine protection weren't used to controlling mana at all. In her view, they were nothing but weaklings, which was why she could control them all, and they couldn't resist her enslavement magic back then. Aragi knew he had to improve to overcome his weakness. He believed that mastering mana control would also enhance his resistance against enemy magic. He realized that mana wasn't as powerful as divine protection, but if he wanted to get stronger in this new world, he knew he had to learn it. Aragi decided to continue fighting the wolfen and practice mana control while climbing the mountain. Suddenly, he sensed something and quickly moved toward it. He approached the leader of the wolfen and asked it to confirm what was going on. The other wolfen were confused about what Aragi was attempting to do, but when the leader wolfen tried to attack Aragi, he swiftly defended himself and defeated the wolfen without hesitation. As Aragi looked up, he noticed that as soon as he defeated their leader, all the wolfen ran away. After all, it was the strongest magical beast of their pack. After that, Aragi chased after the remaining wolfen by himself. Suddenly, to his shock, something special happened. He saw a reddish-colored copy of the wolfen. Seeing this, Aragi wondered if his skill was predicting the trajectory of the wolves' movements. His guess proved correct. It was indeed predicting future trajectories. With this ability, he swiftly defeated 2 more wolves. Aragi realized that with his predictive ability, he could see roughly 1 second into the future. Seeing this, the remaining wolves were frightened. However, Aragi told them not to dare run away and instead join him in training a little longer. After some time, Aragi had wiped out all the wolves. When he checked his own status, he discovered that his new skill, Divine Protection of Foresight, helped him see the future moves of his enemies. Aragi then reflected on how when he received the weak point detection skill, his appraisal skill had also leveled up. This progression upgraded his blessings from normal to enhanced, as appraisal now allowed him to see everything in sight. Exhausted, Aragi decided to take a rest. Suddenly, he felt something and wondered if the Demon King's army had arrived. He abandoned his plan to rest and hurried toward the source of the presence he felt. The scene shifted near the mountain peak, where monsters had captured an elven girl named May. Hector expressed his admiration for her persistence, noting it was to be expected from a disciple of the sage. He then declared that it was the end for her and ordered his monsters to eliminate the elven girl. May was about to say something when she was suddenly attacked by the monsters. To everyone's surprise, Aragi arrived and quickly helped her dodge the attack by carrying her in his arms. May was stunned to see a human saving her. Confused, the monster asked Aragi who he was and whether he was a new enemy. Aragi understood that there were a total of 10 monsters, with their leader Hector being a high-ranking demon. May asked Aragi why he helped her. Aragi responded by asking if she was a disciple of Sage Elan Oret. When May confirmed that she was, Aragi explained that his reason for helping her was that he had some business with Sage Elan Oret. Aragi used his appraisal skill on on May and discovered that she was half-elf. Additionally, he found that she had spell skills in her skill set. Hector remarked that he didn't need to ask who the human was, but he was sure that Aragi was definitely an enemy. He ordered his monsters to kill both the elf and the human. Agari realized that in order to save the girl and earn a favor from the sage, he had to defeat those monsters. The monsters then attacked Agari, and with the help of his foresight ability, he tried to predict their future movements. His foresight was invaluable, allowing him to effectively block their attacks. The monsters were shocked, and in a swift motion, Agari dispatched all of them with his knife. The other monsters were stunned by what they witnessed. Agari thought that as long as his foresight was active in close combat, he felt invincible. However, his main concern was the duration of the ability and how much time he had left. On the other side, Hector instructed his monsters not to charge recklessly, but to use magic to attack the human. The monsters agreed and began shooting magic bullets at Agari. Seeing the magic bullets, Agari tensed, realizing the danger they posed. However, to his relief, May used a spell from Syl, the wind spirit, to blow all the bullets away. Agari asked in surprise if it was a spell, understanding the power of borrowing strength from spirits and art reserved for elves. May confirmed, thanking Agari and mentioning that she could rest for a bit. Frustrated, Hector declared they wouldn't win at this rate and decided to join the fight himself. Agari became serious and asked May, referring to her as an elf, to keep the other monsters from interfering while he dealt with their leader. May responded that she could handle it and requested Agari to stop calling her elf, as her name was May. Agari acknowledged her request and expressed his trust in her by addressing her as the disciple of the sage. May got furious and shouted that her name was May, but soon became frustrated, asking Agari to forget about it. Here, Agari faced Hector head-on, only to find Hector was very strong. Despite clashing swords, Agari used Hector's sword to propel himself into the air and attacked Hector with his knives. However, Hector blocked the attack with his own sword. Hector then counterattacked, but Agari dodged swiftly, managing to slash him with the knife. Hector took some damage and admitted he was surprised Agari predicted his attack, considering it a good attempt. Agari, on the other hand, was shocked to see that the wound wasn't superficial. He tensed, realizing the power of a high-ranking demon, and understood he would likely be dead without his foresight ability. Hector commented that if Agari weren't human, he could have easily defeated him. Agari then used his appraisal skill to check Hector's status, and found that in addition to his physical abilities and sharp senses as a high-ranking demon, Hector possessed a swordsmanship skill level of 5. Realizing he had a significant disadvantage in a direct battle with Hector despite his foresight skill, Agari decided to attempt a new strategy. Hector shouted at Agari that if he wasn't going to come to him, then he would come to battle it out. Despite this, Agari managed to dodge Hector's attack, but finally, Hector cut his hand, leaving Agari tense. He realized there was no point in predicting the future if his body couldn't keep up, as the physical gap between them was too large to bridge. Hector laughed and mocked Agari, asking if he was just going to run like that. Suddenly, Agari took out his gun and shot at Hector, but Hector easily blocked the bullets with his reflexes using his hand. Agari saw this and felt relieved that the bullets had penetrated Hector's hand and injured him. Hector was stunned, demanding to know what kind of device Agari was using. Furious at such an impudent device, Hector attacked Agari, who was prepared to shoot with his gun, but Hector managed to dodge the bullets and warned Agari not to underestimate him, as he could easily predict the trajectory of the bullets. Agari ran out of bullets, so he threw knives at Hector, who blocked them with his sword. Suddenly, much to Hector's surprise, Agari stopped attacking and silently sat down on the ground. Before Hector could react, Agari threw a bomb toward him. Hector wondered what it was and rushed toward Agari to attack, but before he could reach him, the bomb exploded, shocking the other monsters. Even May was surprised to see it and wondered who Agari really was, as he displayed such amazing skills. She noted that Agari was dominating against a high-ranking demon despite being human. On the other hand, Agari was ready with a knife, realizing he had no ammunition left for the handgun he kept as an emergency, and that the grenade had been his last resort. Seeing Hector getting back up, Agari realized that relying on guns and grenades wouldn't be enough to defeat him. Hector was now furious because Agari was using unfamiliar devices in their fight. Hector furiously attacked Agari, who dodged the assault. During this moment, Agari decided to activate his weak point detection skill, but first, he needed to carefully analyze Hector's movements. As Hector prepared to attack, Agari analyzed the future trajectory of the attack and identified its weak point, the neck. He positioned himself with his knife, ready at that spot. Hector advanced unknowingly, driving himself onto Agari's waiting knife, which struck him in the neck. Hector was shocked, wondering how Agari had managed to strike him with such precision. Agari acknowledged that weak point detection was a powerful skill, but it drained mana quickly. Suddenly feeling fatigued, Agari sat down on the ground. Agari became tense as he realized he had run out of mana, which was bad news for him. The monsters also noticed their leader, Hector, was dead, but seeing Agari was exhausted, they decided to attack him. May also became tense because her spirits were exhausted, and she wanted to help Agari, at least to repay him for saving her. As the monsters charged toward Agari, suddenly someone cast a fire spell, engulfing the entire group of monsters in flames and wiping them out. Agari noticed that the firepower from the flames was on a different level compared to Naga's. Suddenly, a voice came from May's side, apologizing for being late. May was happy to see her and addressed her as master. Hearing this, Agari realized she was the sage Elbana-Ket whom he had been seeking. Elan-Karat thanked Agari, acknowledging that he seemed to have been trying to help her disciple based on the situation. Agari replied that it was just a coincidence and asked if she was the great sage Elan-Ket. Elban-Ket confirmed with a yes and added that compared to before, she was now just old and frail. Agari tried to use his appraisal skill, but his mana was too low. Still, Agari knew that the sage Elbana-Ket was very strong, and he would never be able to defeat her, so he guessed there was no point in hiding anything. He had to be honest with her. Elban-Ket asked Agari if he had some business with her, and he responded with a yes. Elban-Ket said that there was no reason for someone to come to her without a purpose and thanked him for saving her disciple. She promised to do her best to answer his questions. May then asked Elbana-Ket if they should head back home, as the area was full of blood and the wolves might come soon. Elan-Ket agreed with the mayor and asked Agari to come along, saying he needed some rest too. Agari agreed and thought the situation was favorable so far. Helping his disciple was worth it. The scene then shifted to later, when Agari and the others arrived at Elan-Net's house. After entering, the mayor said she was going to take a bath. Agari then asked Elbana-Ket why she lived in such a remote place. Elbana-Karat responded that she had several reasons, but mainly she wanted to return to nature. Even during her retirement, many people tried to take advantage of her. Agari understood, saying her home wasn't easy to visit. Elbana shared that sometimes skilled people like him did come to her home, and she wasn't the kind of person to reject those who sought her out. Agari directly told her he was one of the hero candidates tasked with subjugating the Demon King. Elbana-Karat said they were the third generation of hero candidates. She also mentioned hearing rumors, but never expected they had already been summoned. Upon hearing about the third generation, Agari was stunned and recalled Leonora's words, implying they had summoned several hero candidates before. Elban-Karat noted that they had summoned hero candidates about 4 years ago, which was their second summoning. The first summoning happened around 10 years ago. She shared both generations of heroes had been sent to defeat the Demon King and had been annihilated in the process. Since then, the summoning ritual had been sealed and was never to be used again. However, Saintess Leonora was planning to break the taboo and summon the third generation. Elan-Karat opposed this idea, believing it was reckless to trust the fate of a country to someone from another world, regardless of whether it was a divine wish or not. Agari calmly said he had already dealt with Leonora, so they shouldn't be able to perform another summoning ritual. Upon hearing this, Elbana-Karat found it hard to believe, thinking it impossible for him to defeat Leonora. Agari smiled and replied there were several ways to defeat someone, even with a large skill gap. Hearing this, Elbana-Ket laughed, thinking it amusing for Leonora to be defeated by her own pawn. Elan-Karat asked if she could say that Leonora had reaped what she sowed. She also mentioned she understood Agari's wish, as it was natural for someone to want to return home. Then, she said she didn't want to talk too much, so she'd get straight to the point. She couldn't send them back to their home with her spells. Hearing this, Agari was shocked and saddened. He asked if she had any clues about how they could return home. Elan-Karat said summoning with human magic should be possible, but sending someone back wasn't feasible anymore. That knowledge had been lost for ages since there was no reason to research it further. Agari mentioned Leonora had said the same thing, and asked if, in short, they had to defeat the Demon King with no other options. Elan-Karat responded it was likely the case, or perhaps, with the aid of some demonic arts, it might be achievable to some extent. After hearing about demonic arts, Agari thought he would need to investigate that next. Elan-Ket apologized for not being able to help him further and thanked him for saving her disciple, promising to let him know if she found anything useful. Agari thanked Elan-Karat for her words. In response, Elbana-Karat smiled and suggested that maybe he could defeat the Demon King. Agari replied he didn't want to undertake such troublesome work, but if there was no other choice, he would have to defeat the Demon King. Seeing the rage and killing intent on Agari's face, Ellen Caro became tense, thinking he seemed different from the other hero candidates she had encountered. It felt like he had grown up in a dark and cold place. Lastly, Agari thanked Elbana Carrot for her time and asked her to contact Siren from the Adventurers Guild if she found anything useful. Ellen Carrot then decided to entrust the mayor to Agari, just as Mayor emerged from the bathroom after her bath. She suggested Agari should also take a bath, considering he must have gotten dirty after climbing the mountain and battling. Agari agreed, saying she was right, and decided to take a bath. Elban Carrot interrupted them, telling Agari she had a suggestion. Agari asked what it was. Elon Carrot then asked Agari why he didn't bring her disciple on his journey. Mayor was stunned and asked if, by disciple, Ellen Orit meant her. The scene then shifted to the Vora Demonic Kingdom's eastern region, the frontline battlefield with the Holy Kingdom of Diarist, where Agari and Mayor were headed. It seemed Agari had to take Mayor with him on his journey. Agari praised the weather and mentioned he heard the weather in demonic territory was harsh. Mayor responded that the place they were standing used to be the territory of the Holy Kingdom until recently, and that the harsh weather should be even more severe deeper into the Vora Kingdom. Agari understood that the territory had been invaded by the Demon King's army. Mayor also mentioned that around the western region of the Urano mountain range, there was a big city called Nutrat, and there should be villages around that city. She also said the city had fallen to the Demon King's army, and had become their frontline destination. She estimated it would take them about 2 days of walking to reach there. Agari hesitantly asked what had happened to the people living in that village. Mayor sadly responded that half the population had been killed, and the other half enslaved by demons for forced labor. Some people managed to escape to the other side of the mountain. Upon hearing Mayor's account, Agari nodded, understanding and admiring her knowledge, feeling bringing her along on the journey was the right decision. The scene then shifted to the past, when Elbana Ket asked Agari about taking Mayor on his journey. When Agari initially declined, Mayor was shocked and shouted at him to at least consider her. Elan Oret laughed at Agari's comment and advised him not to speak like that. She pointed out that, for someone who had recently arrived in this world, Mayor would be quite useful due to her extensive knowledge passed down through generations. Elon Aret also mentioned she had been looking for an opportunity to send Mayor on a journey, but was worried about sending her adorable disciple alone. Hearing this, Agari looked confused and asked Elbana Carrot why she was still entrusting Mayor to him, since Elbana Carrot could have taken Mayor out on her own. Elon Carrot responded, she no longer had the capability to embark on journeys herself. Despite looking youthful and healthy from a human perspective, her time and abilities were limited. Just then, someone suddenly appeared and saved her disciple's life. Mayor expressed her appreciation, but needed time to think before she could finish her sentence. Agari interrupted and said he was planning to infiltrate the demon's territory, warning it would be a dangerous journey. He emphasized that if Mayor slowed him down, he'd leave her behind. Elban Ket approached Mayor and reminded her it was ultimately her decision, as it was her life after all. Mayor focused on that phrase and exclaimed she understood, declaring she was ready to go with Agari. The scene shifted back to the present, where Agari nervously commented that Mayor seemed tired. He reminded her they still had a full day of walking ahead, in case she hadn't realized. Mayor asked him not to expect too much from a spellcaster's body, since she'd been physically training the whole time despite her focus on magic. Agari then suggested they call it a day and rest. Hearing this, Mayor was surprised and asked if he hadn't said he would leave her behind if she slowed him down. Agari reassured her he wouldn't leave her for that reason, and told her to hurry up and set up camp. Mayor was impressed by his response and said she understood, planning to set it up in a few minutes. The scene then shifted to nighttime with Agari and Mayor sitting around a bonfire. Mayor was eating while Agari hesitated, staring at her. He mentioned that she probably already understood the journey would soon be dangerous, and he wouldn't hesitate, even if it became risky, because he was determined to return to his home world. However, he recognized that Mayor might not have as compelling a reason to join him. Agari then asked if he was right in assuming that Elban Carrot wasn't lying, and that Mayor had her own reasons for joining him. Mayor replied she didn't know how to explain it well, but she had experienced loss. Her former home, the Elven village, had been destroyed by the Demon King's army. Upon hearing this, Agari asked if the war was supposed to be between humans and monsters. Mayor responded that such distinctions were trivial as the demons overwhelmed all races. She explained that her father, mother, and even her little brother had been killed. She survived because her father sacrificed himself as bait to distract the monsters. During that time, she couldn't do anything to help, and after the Demon King's army left, she was left for dead. That's when Elben found her and took her in, becoming her master and mentor. Agari said he wasn't interested in her past. He just wanted to know her goal. Mayer said he should have figured it out from her story. The reason she became Elben's disciple and a spellcaster was to gain the power to defeat monsters. Mayer's eyes filled with fury and vengeance as she declared everything she had learned from her master over the past 10 years was for revenge. She vowed to personally wipe out the man who killed her family. Agari was surprised and asked for the name of the demon. Mayer replied it was one of the 4 heavenly kings, Wimberg, known as the Heavenly King of the Wind, and one of the highest leaders in the Demon King's army. Agari then asked if the reason Mayer agreed to join him was to get closer to Wimberg. He added that for now, he didn't have a personal reason to fight against the demons. Mayer also mentioned she didn't understand why Elben had given her permission after meeting Agari, since they were discussing their masters. She admitted she didn't know what Elben was thinking, which was why she'd follow Agari's instructions for now. Agari said he understood her situation. He recalled Elben asking him to take care of Mayer, confident he could handle her. He then understood why Elben hadn't allowed her to journey alone. She might have risked her life pursuing revenge aimlessly. Mayer apologized for bringing up such a heavy topic and reassured him not to worry, as she didn't want to involve him in her quest. Agari understood that Mayer was determined to pursue her revenge herself. He asked her to end the conversation and go to sleep since they had to travel the next day. Mayer agreed and mentioned she would set up spirits to keep watch, alerting them if any monsters approached. While Mayer slept peacefully, Agari pondered the 4 heavenly kings of the Demon King's army. He observed Mayer sleeping soundly and quietly exited the tent. He reflected on how his previous enemy had been a high-ranking demon, and now he faced another one, realizing they needed to become stronger before confronting such powerful foes. Agari quickly decided to set those thoughts aside for now, recognizing that worrying wasn't productive at the moment. The scene shifted to the western corner of the Holy King Fort, where high-ranking officials discussed that now, with the hero candidates, it was the right time to go on the offensive. Others agreed and asked where to begin the attack. Amelia also suggested that attacking Fort Arus would be a good start. It used to be theirs, and now was a chance to take it back as it was currently their frontline base. If we break them, the enemy will surely retreat, said Heinrich. He noted that it was a reckless plan, pointing out they had been on the defense until now, so why suddenly go on the offensive? A high-ranking official asked Heinrich what would happen if those hero candidates were his subordinates. Amelia acknowledged Heinrich's point, but said the enemy might still be underestimating them, which was why they wouldn't expect a sudden offensive. She then asked Midushuji if his presence had been discovered. Midushuji responded yes, adding that if told to fight, he would wield his sword. After that, Heinrich, Midushuji, and Hashimoto Mar headed back. Heinrich said the plan would execute the next day and noted it was rare for Amelia to be this aggressive. Hashimoto Mar asked if he thought the plan would go smoothly, noting everyone seemed pretty confident back there. Midushuji responded that if they were going to do it anyway, it was good to be on the offensive while the enemy was still regrouping. He believed it wasn't a mistake. Heinrich replied they were relying too much on the hero candidates' power and abilities, which made them overconfident. He also said while they were reinforcing their defenses outside of command, they couldn't disobey orders from higher-ups. Hashimoto asked tensely if they didn't have any choice. Heinrich responded they did not. He'd still support them as best he could, but the hero candidates were the key to this operation, so they should be told to get a good night's sleep. Suddenly, Midushuji became tense, sensing something was off. He had a bad feeling, but there was no choice. The scene then shifted to the next day near Fort Arus, where the hero candidates and Heinrich with his team were ready to attack. Naze Rina asked why they were attacking at such a bright hour in the morning, questioning if a surprise attack would be more effective at night. Heinrich pointed out that demons could see clearly in the dark, so attacking at night might actually work against them. Midushuji wanted to confirm their goal of defeating the monster leader, while the main force distracted the other monsters. He noted that the leader was likely a high-ranking demon. Midushuji told the hero candidates he'd lead the attack when the time came, instructing them that if he wasn't around, they should either hold off the enemy or fall back. Just then, a guard approached Heinrich with a message from the main force, indicating it was time to start the operation. Heinrich urged Midushuji and the others to charge in without hesitation, and everyone attacked the fort, storming inside. Amelia shouted for everyone to annihilate the monsters. Unbeknownst to them, their actions were being watched by Stone Gaia, the king of the demon army. The scene shifted a few moments later, where Heinrich and some hero candidates entered the main tower of the fort. The monsters inside were stunned and tried to attack, but Midoshuji quickly took them out. Heinrich cautioned Midoshuji to stay alert, as the enemy leader might be lurking in the hall. Suddenly, they found themselves surrounded by monsters on both sides. Some hero candidates asked what to do, and Heinrich instructed Midoshuji to let the 8th Night Order handle their backs while they moved toward their goal. Midoshuji agreed and called out to Nyasa. She confidently responded that she didn't need to be told, as her role was to eliminate the monsters in their way. She unleashed her power, and the others followed suit, quickly defeating the monsters before them. Finally, when they opened the large door, they were stunned to see a humanoid figure. Sam tensely asked, "What the hell is this now?" Arashi Shanshuki also questioned whether the figure was their leader. Stonia revealed that he was one of the 4 heavenly kings of the Demon King army. Kanzaki Rin and Hashimoto Morei tensed up upon hearing this. Midoshuji felt uneasy, realizing that the pressure radiating from Stone Gaia was far from normal. Stone Gaia drew his sword and challenged them to see who was stronger. Midoshuji told everyone to get ready, but was deep down trying to gather his courage. He knew that if they lost to Stone Gaia, the sacrifices made by the main force would be in vain. Everyone was prepared to fight, but instead of attacking, Stone Gaia sat down and touched the ground. Midoshuji was confused, but to their surprise, an orange circle appeared around Stone Gaia. The hero candidates tensed up upon seeing it as dirt surged from the ground, summoning numerous golems that appeared before them, shocking everyone. Stonia then commanded the golems to attack and eliminate the hero candidates. Midoshuji instructed everyone to hold off the golems. Narumi Yosh responded affirmatively and began attacking with his nature power, slicing through golems with sharp leaves. Arashi Shanshuki joined in, blasting through the golems with fire. He laughed, pointing out that no matter how many golems there were, those slow-moving creatures didn't stand a chance against them. However, Stone Gaia used his magic to regenerate the broken golems. Upon seeing this, the hero candidates were surprised and wondered how it was possible. They resumed the fight, breaking down the golems, only to watch them regenerate again. At one point, RQA nearly got hit by a golem, but Kenzaki Rin used her domination attack to control some of the golems. However, when someone else attempted to strike a golem, it surprisingly managed to hit back. Hashimoto Morei furiously attacked with her telekinesis, destroying more golems, but to their frustration, the golems began regenerating again shortly after. Arashi Shinuki expressed his annoyance, realizing there seemed to be no end to the golem's regeneration. In that moment, Narumi Yosh recalled similar situations from manga he had read, where defeating the summoner was usually the best strategy. He suggested to Midoshuji that they focus on taking down Stone Gaia instead of the golems. Midoshuji agreed, and he and Arashi Shinuki charged furiously towards Stonia to attack. Stonia smiled and remarked to the hero candidates that they were underestimating him. He used magic again, summoning stones from the ground and hurling them at Midoshuji. Midoshuji tried to dodge the attack by running, but to his shock, the stones followed him wherever he went. He found himself unable to avoid the stones and ended up getting hurt. Seeing this, everyone shouted his name in concern, but Midoshuji reassured them that he was alright. Unbeknownst to Stone Gaia, this was actually a distraction set up by Midoshuji to allow Arashi Shinuki to sneak up for a surprise attack. Their plan succeeded, and Arashi Shinuki managed to catch Stone Gaia off guard with a powerful punch infused with his full flame power. Everyone watched with anticipation, wondering if Arashi Shinuki had managed to defeat the Demon King. But when the smoke cleared, it revealed that Arashi Shinuki had crashed into a wall made of dust and clay. To everyone's surprise, the wall struck back, delivering a punch to Arashi Shinuki's stomach, causing him to faint. Stone Gaia laughed mockingly, asking if that was all the hero candidates had in them. Meanwhile, while Midoshuji and the party were fighting one of the 4 heavenly kings, our boy Aragi Kai arrived at the fallen city of Nutra. To avoid being seen, they had to take an unconventional route, using only the light from a fire spell atop a scepter to illuminate their way as they ventured deeper beneath the fallen city. Mayor was somehow convinced to traverse the city's stinky sewer system while covering her nose. Kai, however, didn't mind the foul stench. She admitted she would never have thought of infiltrating a fallen city through its underground sewage. All he could ask was for her to be a little more patient, as they should reach their destination soon. They just had to be careful of the demon's superior eyesight at night, since the city was designed with many open areas. Additionally, Nutra was a frontline city, so security was bound to be tight. After a few more minutes walking through the city's excrement tunnel, they finally found their way out. Just like that, the duo had effectively infiltrated Nutra without being noticed at the cost of smelling like dookie. As soon as they stepped into the city proper, Kai felt a bad premonition. Her senses indicated someone was coming. so they had to hide in a barrel like it was a 90s cartoon. A few moments later, two guard demons strolled down the street. One of them complained about being assigned to guard the witch. However, the position to serve under the witch wasn't based on personal merits. The complainant might not have cared much for it, but he had the skills. That didn't stop him from being reprimanded by the witch, though. As the two demons walked away, pondering the issues within their chain of command, Kai and Mayer emerged. Kai wondered what the deal was with this witch. As far as he knew, she was supposed to be the Princess of Demons and the new governor of New Trat City. Mayer knew her as the Witch of Space, and she was their current target. Before they set off, the sage had suggested that Kai meet with the witch, who controlled space and lived in New Trat. She might be the only one who could grant his wish. They had managed to get into the city, but reaching the princess would require some heavy planning to avoid a conflict they couldn't afford. A veteran assassin would carefully gather more information while staying out of sight, and that was exactly what Kai had in mind. Mayer swore never to get in the way and to follow his orders to navigate through this mess. The fallen city had officially transformed into a demon stronghold where they could organize and prepare for their next conquest. If you looked around, you'd see demon soldiers merely living their lives and laughing with friends. They would drink and get wasted in the middle of the day, just like degenerate humans, using the abandoned houses as their cover. Kai and Mayer took careful note of the city's current state. Mayer even found the lack of trouble disappointing as they watched demons going about their normal daily lives. Kai believed that as long as a species could converse and showed intelligence, they'd live just like humans. But New Trat was not as peaceful as it initially seemed. Some of the original human residents had been turned into slaves to assist the demons with logistics and their new homes. The demons didn't treat their slaves kindly. They'd gladly whip them if they felt like it. This time, Mayer was taken aback by such cruelty, though it was expected. It was common knowledge that demons tended to enslave humans, so this type of cruelty wasn't shocking, but seeing it firsthand was still jarring. The mere act of beating the slaves quickly turned into a fun pastime for the bored soldiers. Mayer couldn't sit still and watch this madness unfold. Just as Kai was about to calm her down, he sensed a presence that couldn't be ignored materialize in the room. The presence had a cute little voice and asked, "Are you not demons?" A young girl with crimson eyes, a grandiose outfit, and two dark horns on either side of her head stared curiously at the intruders. Kai's instincts kicked in, and panic surged because he hadn't noticed this unknown variable. He pulled out one of his throwing knives, hoping to respond in time, but the young girl reassured him that he didn't need to fret because she hadn't come to fight. Unconvinced, Kai quizzed the girl about who she was and how she found them. After all, it should have been impossible for her to evade his detection, especially at such close range. This girl must be using demonic arts. She admitted that she'd been watching since they broke through her detection barrier, but Mayer was sure they'd entered cleanly. She hadn't even sensed any mana residue nearby, which was because the witch who mastered the demonic art of space could see everything. Kai finally realized who they were facing, and used appraisal to confirm her identity as Isabel Vora, protected by the evil Lord, a master of the demonic art of space, master of all attribute demonic arts, and an absolute monster when it came to stats. Isabel formally introduced herself as the 5th princess of the Vora demonic kingdom. Kai took a step back, feeling intimidated. She asserted that if these two intruders failed to answer her questions, she would command her army to apprehend them. A human and an elf had just snuck into her territory, and they didn't look like spies. She wanted some clarity on their objective. Kai knew that fighting here would be way too risky, so a somewhat peaceful negotiation was ideal. He started speaking, warning the princess that his lure would take a while. Isabel got comfortable and told Kai to share his tale, as she was just wasting time and bored. After hours of recounting his journey so far, Isabel finally understood why Kai wanted to return to his home world. He had heard from the sage that it might be possible with the demonic art of space, so he had come here to see if it was realistic. Isabel casually stated that it was indeed possible to send Kai back to his home. For the first time in ages, he stumbled upon a solid lead. He was lucky that the Witch of Space was willing to chat. She didn't feel like a typical demon, as she didn't harbor any hatred toward humans. Isabel continued, explaining that the process would require him to know the exact coordinates of his home world. Although the solution hung before him, finding Earth's coordinates was another major headache. As long as they didn't know the exact coordinates among countless worlds, sending Kai back was impossible. The three stood or sat in silence, exchanging meaningful glances. Kai asked if there was a way to find the coordinates of his home world, but there were just too many parallel worlds out there, making it tricky to find the right one among infinite choices. Using another one of his new abilities, the Eye of Truth, Kai didn't detect any deception in her words. Isabel went on to say there was also a limit due to his mortal body. He had come here protected by Lord, making it impossible to bypass her demonic arts even if she tried. The will of Lord was basically trapping him in this world, so they couldn't go home unless they accomplished the mission to kill the Demon King. Isabel didn't seem too sure about that. She hadn't thought that far ahead yet. Although Kai didn't get an easy answer, he was at least aware of an alternative choice when it came down to it. But the most straightforward path would be to kill the Demon King and fulfill the vision. He might not have explicitly voiced it, but Isabel could see the conclusion he'd come up with just by looking at him. Kai was open to the idea of returning home through demonic arts, but it didn't sound easy. Mayor suddenly chimed in, asking why the princess of the demonic kingdom was being so cooperative. Isabel tore the fabric of space open and casually explained that even the demonic kingdom was divided into factions, and she was merely acting in her own interest. The duo tensed up, preparing for combat and expecting the demon to strike. However, Isabel simply looked at them with her deadpan eyes and wished them good luck as she entered her spatial rift. She also warned them that escaping her city wouldn't be easy. With that, the rift in space closed, and Isabel Vora vanished to who knows where. Mayor, who had been holding her breath the whole time, could finally exhale. Kai reflected on the strength of the Demon King's bloodline. If they had fought, they would have been helplessly slaughtered. It was a stroke of luck that she didn't turn hostile after such a fortunate encounter. Kai was worried that misfortune would follow him. Just as the mayor warned him to stop jinxing their situation, the city alarm started blaring. The duo looked out the window and saw demon soldiers going wild, chasing some human spies who had infiltrated the city. There was no doubt about it, they had been exposed, probably thanks to that mischievous witch. She wished them luck and then informed her army. Her actions were as bizarre as she was, but at times like this, Kai accepted that they wouldn't understand how someone that powerful thinks. Using the roofs of abandoned housing units, the duo tried to escape the sprawling fallen city. Kai was quick, but the mayor was no slouch either. Together, they managed to avoid the attention of thousands of demons. Based on their deployment pattern, they seemed to be on high alert in the city's interior, and with just a quick look, it was clear each soldier had stats strong enough to pose problems. They had to get out fast, but Kai suddenly stopped. The mayor almost slipped off the roof when she had to slam on the brakes. He pulled her down to hide as they observed the city square. Kai sensed a mana signature similar to the witch's and needed to check it out before making another move. This strange mana could potentially be stronger in certain aspects. Standing in the middle of his troops was a white-haired demon with porcelain skin and 3 horns on either side of his temples, and 1 big green horn in the middle. Kai would never forget who this beast was: Wimberg. He hadn't expected such a wild card to show up in this city. Looking over at the mayor, she was practically foaming at the mouth, consumed by vengeance. Following Kai's instincts was definitely the right call. Without taking her eyes off the prize, she confirmed that the beast commanding the army was the Heavenly King of the Winds, one of the Demon King's vassals. From the roof, Kai used his appraisal to see what they were up against. Wimberg had balanced stat sheet, was a master of wind attribute, demonic arts, and swordsmanship, with Hawkeye boosting his combat skills to another level. Kai tapped the mayor on the shoulder, demanding she calm down. Fighting outright would be insane. Thankfully, she managed to get her rage in check. Since their enemy was the Heavenly King of the Winds, and wind magic was great for exploration and detection, they had to be extra careful. On the city grounds, Wimberg's troops were skeptically asking if there were really intruders around. They mobilized a whole hunting brigade based on Wimberg's hunch and pressed on. If they found any intruders, crushing them would only be natural, especially since humanity's trump card, the hero candidates, had been spotted at the front lines. One of Wimberg's troops questioned why he was staying in the back instead of making a name for himself on the front lines. Wimberg simply said that holding the fort suited him better. Other units could handle the bloody work. Suddenly, the wind he had initially stirred up returned with curious whispers confirming that there were intruders in the city. If the flow of the wind said so, it was pretty much confirmed. Moreover, the spies were moving cautiously, but they wouldn't be able to escape Wimberg's wind search. By controlling the flow of the wind, he practically had a map hack for the entire city. Wimberg ordered his troops to prepare the pursuit unit. Now in active hunt mode, he knew the witch had the ability to detect the intruders first, so she must have let them pass. He found that interesting. Meanwhile, Kai and the mayor were running for their lives, using the abandoned residential areas as cover. When they reached a street corner, Kai ordered the mayor to stop. The demon search party had arrived in their vicinity, scouring every corner for the intruders. They must have sensed the duo's movements, but couldn't pinpoint their exact location yet. The mayor had also noticed that the winds had been acting strangely for a while, making the spirits restless. It had to be that pesky wind search skill, desperately trying to catch a scent of them. The mayor could disrupt the unnatural wind flow with her spells, but that would give away their position. Since they hadn't been spotted yet, they needed to reposition wisely to avoid being overwhelmed by the sheer number of demons patrolling the streets, heads darting around. The duo was still maneuvering at ground level to dodge the unnatural wind flow, but it was only a matter of time before the army searching for them finally caught on. Thanks to the mayor's dwindling stamina, they were detected. Kai decided to use the city's landmarks to their advantage, but for that plan to work, the mayor would have to act as a decoy. Without waiting for her confirmation, he parkoured to the tops of the houses, leaving the mayor alone on the streets while she complained below. He pumped her up with the promise of revenge, making her realize that crying wouldn't help them right now. Seeing the duo split up, the demons turned their focus to the elf girl, whom they could easily catch. While some of them tried to find the slippery Kai, the mayor finally stopped running and turned around to cast a spell. She commanded fire spirits to grant her the power of salamander, making the demons stop in their tracks. But before they could realize what was happening, they were literally cooked both metaphorically and literally. Unfortunately, such a flashy spell would attract even more enemies, revealing the mayor's position as battalions of demons closed in on her. Taking advantage of the commotion, Kai jumped to the distracted battalion's rear and started dishing out death with one slash at a time. The first death was confirmed, yet the other demons in the battalion still hadn't noticed him. Using a mix of quick, efficient slices, Kai turned the area into demon mincemeat. Finally, as the captain of the battalion noticed the sounds of slaughter behind him, he turned around. What he saw was his entire group lying in pools of their own blood. That split second of fear was easy for a seasoned assassin to exploit. The captain called Kai a coward, and in response, Kai wiped out the battalion with another thick splatter of gore. Meanwhile, the mayor was still stuck in the streets, using a water spell to overwhelm the enemies. Using water in a crowded hall was quite effective in staggering the demon army's advance. Still, as the raging water pushed the demons back, they fought hard to push forward. The mayor knew she was only delaying her demise, but she had no choice when there seemed to be no end to the demons. It was a hopeless situation until she noticed some unnatural splashes at the back in quick succession. The demons at the rear kept falling victim to the blade. The mayor also found it easier to push the dwindling number of demons back with her water spell, slashing at their throats to end it all without a fight. Who could have possibly done such a thing? When one of the demons finally noticed the fall of his comrades, it was already too late. He was rewarded with a throwing blade lodged deep in his skull, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he had just run into Shinigami, the Lord of Death. Kai easily navigated through the trapped army, his body stained with their blood as he collected his blades. He complimented Mayor for being a good decoy, which made his life a lot easier. She appreciated the praise, but it didn't change the fact that she had almost been killed. The duo might have successfully hidden their movements, but Wimberg was growing impatient. His army wanted to call for more allies, but Wimberg thought that was unnecessary. Sending for more demons would only increase their casualties. So, Heavenly King Wimberg gladly took the task on himself. Mayor and Kai were close to the exit when a strong gust of wind filled with mana interrupted them. Detecting the incoming sharp wind missiles, Mayor kept her cool and called upon Sil, the spirit of the wind, to intervene. Using her spell, she was able to stop the momentum of the wind missiles. Kai braced himself for an even bloodier fight, as the real big shot had just joined in from above. Wimberg scanned the entire city while commanding the wind, admitting that this time the intruders were not just mere rats. Mayor glared at the man who had ruined her life with unbridled fury. This was her chance for much-needed revenge, and she had to be ready to seize it confidently. Luckily, she had been preparing for this fight for a decade. As Wimberg hovered in the air, surveying the battlefield, the duo drew their weapons, ready to battle. Kai was woefully certain that a Heavenly King was not an opponent that mortals like them could defeat in a drawn-out fight. They had to figure out a way to win quickly and go all out from the start. Mayor agreed, her focus unwavering as she once again called on the spirit of wind, Sil. This time, her spell transformed into wind blades, a deadly form of wind spirit magic aimed at Wimberg. The Heavenly King merely glanced at the incoming attack and felt insulted by its quality. It was rare for an opponent to dare use wind against him, the master of the same element. The enemy had to be either brave or foolish to attempt such a thing. With just a thought, he neutralized the wind blades by overpowering them with his own. From above, Wimberg laughed, mocking Kai for attempting such a foolish advantage. Being a seasoned warrior, Wimberg maintained constant awareness of his surroundings using wind search, meaning even if Kai managed to sneak into a blind spot, he would be detected. That was the ultimate counter to his trusty assassination skills. Fortunately, he wasn't alone. Mayor was there to assist him. Raising her scepter, she began preparing another spell. Wimberg was about to retaliate when he noticed what the elf girl was doing. She was using a wind demonic art that made Wimberg omnipresent omnipresent, controlling the flow of wind with precision. As long as Mayer disturbed the flow herself, the wind search would become useless. Wimberg couldn't shake the feeling that the elf girl understood the weaknesses in his fighting style. Kai realized that Mayer must have been thinking about how to get her revenge her whole life. That's why she knew how to counter the Heavenly King. With the wind disrupted, Kai began moving quickly to conceal himself while closing the distance. Wimberg found it arrogant that a mere human was trying to employ such basic tactics against him. Kai successfully made it to him in midair, but Wimberg simply soared higher, mockingly looking down at Kai for even attempting to reach him when he ruled the skies. This just made things more complicated, as that flight skill was the same as Narumi's. Kai's thoughts were interrupted by Mayer, who urged him to jump again. Trusting his teammate, he complied, and this time he received a healthy boost of wind magic to enhance his leap and enable flight. Wimberg panicked as Kai used foresight alongside weak point detection to land a clean kill shot in one go. Instantly, he foresaw 1 second into the future, with Wimberg dodging to the side and a weak point appearing in his throat. But just like that, the line to the weak point vanished in a split second. Kai had never experienced anything like it. He had the kill shot, and then, suddenly, he didn't anymore. That was because Wimberg had switched up his fighting style as he drew his sword, a slender, sleek, straight blade radiating wind power in a green glow. Wimberg was genuinely offended that a mere intruder had forced him to draw his weapon, and now Kai was trapped in the air with a heavenly demon focused on sending him to his grave. Then came a torrential rain of sword strikes that could have ripped through his flesh if not for his foresight. But even with his overpowered skill, the attacks were still too fast. As it turned out, Wimberg was the one who taught swordsmanship to Hector, the demon Kai had dispatched in the mountains. While preoccupied with overpowering the assassin in front of him, the Heavenly King failed to consider Mayer. A giant boulder came crashing down, intent on crushing him, providing Kai the perfect opening to retreat and regroup, figuring out their next move. The odds were stacked against them, but the duo was determined to take down one of the 4 Heavenly Demon Kings today. Deflecting that giant boulder would have been incredibly tough, even with demonic wind arts, but Mayer definitely had some aces up her sleeve. Kai began to grasp just how much resentment this girl was holding on to, and so did Wimberg. He recognized that these intruders must be Hector's killers. Mayer punctuated that fact by asking Wimberg how it felt to lose someone he cared about. The demon let out a menacing laugh and recognized Mayer as the survivor of the one village he had pillaged. She had been practicing her spells non-stop to deliver justice for that attack from a decade ago. Wimberg started taunting her, recounting the day of the attack in vivid detail. Mayer hadn't expected this beast to remember what happened to her hometown, but the demon reveled in the cries of the elves from that time. He thrived on the fact that elves cared more about others than themselves, watching them plead for mercy. Their despairing expressions were so beautifully tragic, they left him tingling with anticipation. Agitated, the young elf angrily lashed out, ready to charge forward without thinking twice. If Kai hadn't restrained her, advising her not to fall for such obvious provocations, he would rely on her spells, so she needed to keep her cool and stay focused throughout the fight. Mayer snapped out of her rage, reminded that this was a team effort. Kai still needed time to assess the situation, but he was someone who would do anything to win, so it was only a matter of time. Wimberg was a powerful enemy, with capabilities for close and ranged attacks that could deal significant damage. Similarly, Wimberg recognized that the duo was a troublesome team. The man in particular was able to trade slashes with him, despite being human. The only logical explanation was that this mysterious intruder had to be one of the hero candidates. Kai didn't deny Wimberg's assessment of him. The Heavenly King had always kept track of the strongest people from the enemy country, yet he had never heard of Kai, making him an outsider. After some deliberation, Wimberg decided to play it safe and prolong the battle, allowing his superior stats to gradually overwhelm the enemy. Kai's foresight only had 3 minutes left active. If they couldn't finish the fight within that time frame, their chance of winning would drop to virtually zero. Mayer suddenly spoke up, asking Kai to listen to her plan. While Kai listened to Mayer whisper her strategy into his ear, he stayed on guard. Eventually, he agreed to her plan but cheekily reminded her not to drag him down. After all, it was her plan, so that line should have been hers. Wimberg let them scheme and discuss, amused and confident that he had this in the bag. Kai felt a second wind of energy as he stared at the target hungrily. Wimberg just smiled and arrogantly welcomed him with open arms. The first part of the plan was straightforward. Use wind magic to get Kai up in the air while he prepared for another clash. Mayer would stay below and call the Earth Spirit, Norm, summoning multiple boulders to control as she wished. Aiming her spell fell at the demon, she sent the boulders hurtling into the air. Wimberg used his mastery over wind to effortlessly blow the incoming attack away. What should have been a simple attack ended up in the stratosphere, not even close to hitting their target. However, the split second that Wimberg was focused on something else was enough for TR to exploit. Unfortunately, the demon's reaction time was way too fast. The first part may have failed, but Mayer wasn't giving up. She regained control of the boulders that had apparently been blown away, circling back to attack Wimberg from behind. He could either dodge or use a wind wall for protection, so this shouldn't have been a big deal for the demon, but Mayer anticipated that the demon would rely on his magic to block, so she called on Syl once more. Using her wind power, she disrupted Wimberg's defensive maneuver. The boulders broke through the realized wind wall and were headed straight for the enemy's body. The magic attack wasn't meant to deal substantial damage. It aimed to open a gap in Wimberg's defenses. With foresight and weak point detection, Kai capitalized on the distraction. Wimberg managed to raise his sword to meet the incoming blade, but Kai's fluidity with blades was no joke. With a smooth flow of motion, blood rained down on Nutritrat City. Wimberg was mistaken. Kai wasn't aiming for a kill shot to his heart. He aimed for the hand holding the sword. With the perfect setup plan, Kai gained possession of Wimberg's blade. After taking the troublesome weapon, Kai backflipped out of the enemy's range. The shock of having his blade taken away also distracted Wimberg from the attack coming from behind. The boulders struck his body in multiple places with excessive brute force, but the powerful Heavenly King stayed upright, unscathed, without a scratch. The duo might have broken his defense, but he was just too sturdy to take down. Mayer was dumbfounded. She hoped their brilliant sequence of attacks would be enough to exact her revenge. Kai, on the other hand, remained laser-focused on efficiently bringing down a stronger opponent. He remembered what Mayer whispered in his ear. Wind. Demonic arts were weak to the earth element, and she could continuously disrupt Wimberg's wind with her own. To take down a demon like Wimberg, they needed a solid plan and the ability to execute it, but Kai adjusted the plan to simply create openings for him to exploit, which would yield a higher chance of success. At least they had taken Wimberg's weapon now. Mayer still felt confused and used, though. Wimberg was known for his superior wind demonic arts, so taking his melee weapon shouldn't affect him much. Wimberg knew this too, and by the looks of it, Kai wasn't even a swordsman in the first place. He licked his wound, which began healing at a visible rate, and threw another round of wind missiles toward Kai, forcing the assassin to use the sword to neutralize the attack. Kai seized that opportunity to re-enter his effective range, swinging the glowing blade. Much to Wimberg's frustration and surprise, he suddenly couldn't follow the human's attack pattern. With every swing of the blade, Kai pushed Wimberg farther and farther back. Wimberg wasn't just any swordsman, he was an excellent one, so being pushed back by a mere mortal like this was unheard of. Capitalizing on the opportunity, Mayer used her wind spell to add to the chaos. A simple gust of wind aimed at Wimberg's lower body was enough to knock him off balance. As the demon fell, he saw Kai precisely following his trajectory. Looking into the young man's crimson eyes as his own sword was raised over his head, refusing to give in, Wimberg focused his power on his middle horn, causing it to grow hard, thick, and vine-like. The power of wind coalesced at the tip of the horn, forming a formidable wind blade aimed at Kai, but Wimberg was a tad too late. With minimal adjustment and perfect coordination, the outcome of the fight was already decided. The heavenly demon's severed head fell alongside his lifeless body, while Kai performed a superhero landing not far from him. As soon as he landed, Kai ran out of mana and lost his foresight. Wimberg still held on for dear life. Even with his head separated from his body, he didn't expect to fall and lose before finally succumbing to death. He asked Kai how he could move so differently. Kai confessed it was due to the divine protection of Copycat, enabling him to mimic the skills of opponents with his eyes. While experiencing Wimberg's swordsmanship firsthand, he copied his entire style. Kai originally didn't have a grasp on swordsmanship, but he was glad to get something useful from it. Wimberg assessed that Kai must be blessed by the Lord of Creation. For that alone, he could be called the trump card of humanity. To rub in the Heavenly King's fatal wound, Kai affirmed that he got Copycat after killing Wimberg's disciple, Hector, with his last breath. Wimberg called his disciple an idiot for letting an enemy survive and grow stronger. Kai sat atop the battlefield's debris, pondering their next move. Now he had a firm grasp of how strong one of the 4 heavenly kings was. There should be 3 more demons as powerful as this one, and the demon king was surely much stronger. The king also had his bloodline, like Isabel, on his side. Kai admitted he would be no match against the final boss currently inside. He looked up and saw Mayor walking toward Wimberg's corpse with a blank expression. She asked Kai if the job was done, and he confirmed it was. Turning to her, he curiously asked how it felt to achieve her revenge after years of planning and wishing for it. Mayor admitted she felt nothing. She had risked her life to achieve this momentous feat, but felt no satisfaction after doing so. However, she felt somewhat relieved that the burden had been lifted. Wimberg might have died, but her mom, dad, and the other villagers were never coming back. May felt liberated from her past. Kai admitted he was glad to have May by his side. Without her perfectly timed interventions, he would never have stood a chance against Wimberg. To the same went for Hirsch, had been preparing for this battle for a decade but couldn't have done it alone without Kai's skills. For that, she was genuinely grateful. Even if it was something as brutal as revenge, he helped her achieve her life's goal. From Kai's perspective, their goals just happened to align perfectly, and his help was not something that required appreciation. May was used to Kai being nonchalant by now, but she recognized that following him was the right choice. If she had stayed with the sage, she wouldn't have been able to control herself. She would have run away and died meaningless. Her master must have known that. But now that she had completed her life's mission, Kai asked May what was next for her. She hadn't thought that far ahead and felt a bit lost. Kai suggested she could slowly find another goal in life, since elves could live a long time. May corrected him, saying she was only half elf, so her lifespan wouldn't be so long. For the time being, she wanted to continue tagging along with Kai. He asked her if she was sure, since his goal was to kill the Demon King, which actually worked for May too. If the Demon King died, fewer people would suffer the same tragedy as her in the future. Even if Kai insisted he didn't need her, she'd selfishly follow him anyway. This time, Kai didn't push her away. He just laid out the plan to gather as many clues as they could before reinforcements showed up. Seeing Kai was no longer opposed to her tagging along, May lit up with joy, and so the duo snuck out of Neutrat City after killing one of the 4 heavenly demon kings. From the skies, a spatial rift quietly opened with the witch Isabel standing on top of it. With her laid-back gaze, the princess watched as the duo slipped into hiding. She admitted that Kai and May did better than she expected. She thought they might become useful if they managed to escape, but they had actually defeated and killed Wimberg. Her expressionless face turned into a smile. With the help of that human and elf, she could make her move much easier. After the Battle of Neutrat City, the duo headed for the wilderness, away from the detection of demon reinforcements. They eventually found their way back to Albana. On top of the treacherous mountains, the duo gave the sage a rundown of what had happened, and she was just glad they both returned safely. But the fact they had killed a heavenly demon so soon was beyond the sage's expectations. With that topic coming up, May bravely spoke up, but the sage stopped her mid-sentence. Albana already knew what her student wanted to say. She could sense that her little elf wanted to keep following the boy, so she gave her the blessing to do so. She wished her student well as a companion, and maybe even more. With that settled, Albana asked Kai if he was keeping up with the events at the front lines. Curiously, he asked the sage to elaborate on what had happened. As it turned out, Kai's classmates, the hero candidates, were completely and utterly defeated. Hearing that Mew and the gang had lost, Kai asked who their opponent was. Albana reported that they had gone up against the Demon King's army's highest executive, the Heavenly King of Earthstone, Gaia. Since Stone Gaia had the same title as Wimberg, he must be incredibly strong too. Kai finally asked the critical question of whether there were any casualties. Thankfully, everyone seemed to have survived, but with the loss, their morale couldn't sink any lower. Kai intended to see how things would naturally pan out for now. Now that his goal had shifted to killing the Demon King, he could use his classmates to whittle down the army's strength bit by bit. He could probably use the entire class to deal with the remaining Heavenly Kings. May curiously asked if the other hero candidates were as strong as Kai. Objectively, Kai wasn't really sure. Those kids had the strength, but if they couldn't fully utilize their capabilities, that raw power would be meaningless. Speaking of the hero candidates, let's look at Fort Truss, where they had garrisoned for the night. The medical ward of the fort was full of injured soldiers, afflicted by the failed attack of the powerful hero candidates weren't spared. Midu himself sustained quite a few injuries all over his body. As Hano tended to him with a healing skill, he smiled and warned her not to overdo it, knowing she couldn't use the healing skill infinitely. She knew that pushing herself to heal everyone could be dangerous, but it was the only contribution she could make. So, Midu just sat there and let his wounds fade away under the healing light. Earlier that day, their assault against Stone Gaia had unraveled, and if it hadn't been for Hinrich coming to their rescue, they would have been wiped out right then and there. Midu could see that everyone was badly wounded, not just physically physically but mentally too. Rina stared at the ground with an empty gaze. Arashi covered his face in shame for being useless. Midu clenched his fists in frustration. He took the defeat against Stone Gaia as a personal failure, believing they lost entirely because of his flawed leadership. If he had defeated the Heavenly King himself, none of this would have happened. Meanwhile, Fort Arus, occupied by demons, still stood strong, seemingly impregnable. On top of a watchtower, the fort's commander, the Heavenly King of Earth, Stone Gaia, relaxed in the breeze. From a distance, Kai quietly spied on the fort without risking detection, using his outrageously powerful eyesight. He could easily see an immobile target from a few hundred feet away. Even Mei, who had been exposed to magic since she was young, was awed by his sharp vision. Kai couldn't help it. Every time his appraisal skill leveled up, it gained additional effects. Even the elf girl was becoming suspicious of how convenient his skills were. From the safety of their base camp, Kai successfully caught a glimpse of Stone Gaia's outrageous stats. The Heavenly King was a master of demonic earth, arts a defensive juggernaut with some swordsmanship expertise. Kai decided to use the upgraded version of his appraisal and was greeted with a detailed description of the enemy's abilities. At level 4, his appraisal could go deeper, giving him details of the enemy's skills, providing a sizable advantage. But what he really wanted to test was weak point detection. Aiming it at the stalwart heavenly demon, nothing showed up. That just meant the current Kai was too weak to find any exploitable weak points from afar. If every enemy he encountered had a weak point, things would be a whole lot easier. Overall, Kai had a pretty in-depth scouting report for Stone Gaia, down to the specifics of the demon skills. With Mayer's expertise in magic, she could also use water attribute spirits, which earth attribute users are inherently weak against. Just like in Pokemon, type advantage alone doesn't always decide the battle though. Every fight also depends on the skills of the user. Even though Earth attribute demonic arts have a vast number of fighting styles, Stone Gaia must have mastered only a couple of them. If Mayer knew what his specialization was, she could exploit a weak spot, since they were here anyway. Checking out another heavenly demon's lair didn't sound like a bad idea. Back in Fort Truss, the hero candidates were still reeling from the devastating loss. Midu was taking it the hardest of them all. He couldn't help but wonder if Kai could have turned the tables around, but Midu refused to rely on anyone other than himself. He believed that relying on others would mean running away from the grind. Just as he was about to scream his conviction into the air, his classmates showed up. They knew how hard Midu could be on himself. Rina, in particular, knew that the class rep always tried to carry everything by himself. Narumi added that Midu should wipe the look of depression off his face, since they hadn't reached the game over screen yet. One by one, Midu's classmates assured him that this was not a fight he should face alone. He asked them if they still trusted him to lead the group. But that was just a silly question. They couldn't ask for a better leader. Narumi voiced what everyone was thinking. Midu needed to try relying on others more. Hearing and seeing how his friends responded to their loss, Midu smiled for the first time in a while. Narumi also asserted that everyone had gotten a lot stronger, so Midu should take a break from hard carrying. While the class was having a meaningful discussion, the reunion was completed when another group showed up. Arashi and his injured goons got up from their beds to show their resolve. The delinquent boss criticized Midu for showing such a pathetic expression when they should be planning a second round against the stone bastard. Everyone was surprised that Arashi would come here to convene with the whole class. He clicked his tongue, annoyed that they couldn't get it done in one try, so now he was open to listening to Midu's orders to get the win against Stone Gaia. The other classmates were just glad to see Arashi finally uniting with the rest of the class. With a newfound fire in his heart, Midu declared that they would go for another run against the demon who had trashed them. Arashi liked this more determined version of Midu. While everyone was happily and enthusiastically laughing together, Kenzaki remained silent from afar. Although she was glad her classmates had finally united, they still didn't have a concrete plan of attack to defeat Stone Gaia. Her worries instantly disappeared as soon as she heard Kai's voice calling her name. Looking around, she saw Kai hanging around the stairs, warning her not to make any loud noise as he didn't want to get noticed. Kenzaki obliged, covering her mouth to stop herself from making excited noises. Kai had come to confirm what happened in the battle against the Heavenly King of Earth. He pressed Kenzaki for details on the kind of demonic art Stone Gaia had used. After receiving Kenzaki's extensive report, Kai got a good grasp of Stone Gaia's fighting style, which focused on controlling golems. She was certain that the demon style was mostly concentrated on that aspect of demonic arts. This much was right in the range of Mayer's prediction. Hearing him mention another woman's name, Kenzaki felt her blood pressure spike. Kai refused to elaborate and thanked her for the information. She nervously asked if he would be helping the class this time around, and he was considering it. But seeing that everyone seemed resolved, he didn't want to show up and mess up their burgeoning group chemistry. So, just like usual, he would move in the shadows, doing the dirty work and whatnot. A few days after the first human attack, Fortarus maintained peace for a little while. On its outskirts, the summoned hero candidates convened in secrecy, ensuring they were all set for a second attack. They also got Yumi back, one of their classmates who had quit after all the traumatic incidents. Yumi was once part of Rina's crew, so Rina was quite pleased to have her back, and so was Kenzaki. Yumi had officially joined the next Fortarus expedition. Some classmates asked her why she had suddenly decided to rejoin the combatant party after leaving it. Yumi answered that she had heard everyone was having trouble, so she wanted to do something for the class. They jokingly called her a hero for answering like that, but in her mind, Yumi actually had second thoughts about this gig. 5 days ago, she had been working as a waitress in a local inn. Every single day since she got this job, she had been working non-stop to the point of exhaustion. Inside her room was Kai, greeting Kinoshita, as if creepily standing in someone else's room was normal. It must have been the fatigue from working all day, but Kinoshita politely returned the greeting once she realized what was going on, and that there was an edgy teen in the corner of her room. Kinoshita finally freaked out. It took her a while to compose herself, but she managed to do so. When asked why he was in her room, Kai started explaining the struggles of Midu and the rest of the class on the front lines. He added that to overcome their current situation, they were going to need Kinoshita's skill, the divine protection of water manipulation. That was also why he had snuck into her room. Kinoshita had quit the combatant party though, but Kai could see the qualities needed to return as a proper combatant in her. He reckoned that this girl wanted to fight with the others. It was Leonora who had instilled fear in her, but that wouldn't be a problem since that witch had died by Kai's bullets. With Leonora gone, Kinoshita should not hold back anymore. With time, the wounds in her heart had already healed too. Kinoshita was also a really bad waitress, breaking plates every single day. In reality, she had been itching to help Nagas and the others. Kinoshita looked into his eyes and knew that denying it wouldn't get her anywhere. She hadn't expected that a classmate would pay attention to her like this, so she was quite surprised. Kai immediately cleared up the situation, saying he was just scouting for a usable pawn. Ignoring that last statement, Kinoshita asked how he could join the combatant party when he was technically a wanted criminal. It's impossible to join the Holy Kingdom's army with a criminal record, so he wouldn't be officially enlisting. But moving as the group's shadow didn't require a clean criminal record. Back to the present, Kai now had another pawn on the board. Kinoshita was eager to do her best and prove that her power was useful. Kenzaki still mostly kept to herself, listening to chatter here and there. She also received Kai's whole game plan a while ago. Kenzaki was just feeling a little shaky about whether Kinoshita's water would be enough to create a gap in the enemy's defense. Well, Kai wasn't the one actually fighting the demon, so the class should devise their own strategy. The only advice he could give was for them to adapt to each situation appropriately. Before dipping out, he also left a message to Midu, challenging him to show Kai just how much everyone had grown while he was away. Back on the outskirts of Fort Arles, Midu approached Kenzaki to reconfirm their game plan one last time. They simply could not afford to get clobbered for a second time, so the group carefully bounced ideas off each other to refine their approach from afar. Mayor and Kai were just watching and listening. She was curious if those kids could pull it off, knowing that Kai had a better and more elaborate plan in his head. He was taking a back seat today because people won't grow if they're always told what to do. Since the Demon King was the end goal, his classmates would have to step up big time. They had the power, but they were really bad at utilizing their gifts for this war. Kai would keep assistance to a minimum while throwing them hints from time to time. Still, what's important during a battle is deciding your moves by yourself. The demon soldiers of Fort Eras had been deployed to man the garrison and prepare their defense. At their front gate were thousands of human soldiers sporting the flag of the Holy Kingdom. Captain Amelia took charge as the commanding officer of this second raid. At her order, the soldiers of the kingdom bravely pushed their way into the demon-occupied base. The demons at the front lines just laughed at their efforts, thinking these humans hadn't learned from their last defeat. Amelia roused her troops to cleave a path for the hero candidates so they could do their jobs properly. As for the demons, their orders were simple: kill all the invaders. The war quickly devolved into a chaotic melee, with the hero candidates steadily pushing forward. In the middle of it all, Midu could see and feel the presence of their ultimate foe at the fort's tower. The heavenly Kingstone Gaia was not the type to hide under an attack. He was the type to flaunt his golden grills to taunt his enemies from afar. Midu could practically feel the demon inviting them to invade his territory again, and he didn't want to be disappointed a second time. After battling through countless demon foot soldiers, the hero candidates finally reached the gate and promptly blew it up. Arashi's explosion skill came in handy in locked door situations like this one. In front of the party were the pre-made golems of Stone Gaia's making. Midu resolutely declared the commencement of their plan with newfound grandeur. Unbeknownst to everyone on the floor, there were a few sneaky figures watching the fight from a crack in the ceiling. They were none other than Kai and Mayor. Of course, Kai was ready to see how far these kids had come, and in his absence, the hero candidates formed up with Midu and Arashi taking the lead. In front of them were nearly indestructible stone golems. Midu raised his blinding blade and officially started their second attempt at the Stone Gaia raid. Rina was worried this might be too much for Yumi, who had just returned to the combat party. Although she appeared tense, Yumi persevered. Midway through the rush, she used her divine protection to generate copious amounts of water onto the field. With water manipulation, the golems should have a hard time. Stone Gaia watched as a tidal wave swallowed his army. After the battlefield was altered to their advantage, Arashi dove fist first into the action. His explosive punches were effective against big, immobile enemies. Although Midu's sword wasn't optimal, he made up for it with raw strength, technique, and talent. The other hero candidates were also doing their part. They had evidently honed their respective blessings to a decent degree. They might look like forgettable extras, but these extras knew how to topple golems, and that's all that mattered. After the initial clash, every single golem was plunged into the shallow pool on the ground. Stone Gaia immediately infused energy into his army, making them reconstruct themselves, but the wet parts of the golem structure made reconstruction impossible. That meant the hero candidate's plan was working. Stone Gaia didn't stress over it though. He was just annoyed that these humans had added a water user to the mix. So, he took up arms and mobilized his remaining stash of cannon fodder puppets from the ceiling. Mayor and Kai were just chilling and watching intently. Mayor had actually formulated this plan. She hypothesized that the joints connecting the rocks were susceptible to water damage, making them harder to control. Seeing the tide turn in their favor, Midu urged his classmates to hit harder while they had the momentum. Yumi had gained quite a bit of confidence by now, and she was the first to launch the next round of attacks. She summoned a massive wave that washed the remaining golems away. Narumi and the others also moved into their effective range. Up close, the size of the golems towered over them, but they didn't mind. They had the formula to win after all. Stone Gaia smiled at their plan to clear his minions first, praising their new strategy, and whoever came up with the game plan. He touched the ground, and multiple magic circles appeared in his vicinity. The Heavenly King summoned sharp cuts of boulders from these circles. His golems were just expendable minions to filter weaker enemies, so from now on, Stone Gaia would show them the real power of the unshakable earth element, sending the boulders their way. The hero candidates were stunned in place. Thankfully, they had some people who could counter the attack. Hashimoto came in clutch with her telekinetic powers, stopping the boulders from decimating their ranks. Stone Gaia was not expecting his control over the boulders to be overridden at all. Then came Kanzaki, using her domination to suppress the Heavenly Demon King from making another move. A restraining type skill like this was quite game-changing. With the enemy held in place, Arashi charged in to use his explosive offense to deal some damage. Unfortunately, he was blocked by a hastily erected mud wall. His power of explosion was absorbed by the mud, failing to reach its intended target. Once the explosion subsided, it was just the two of them in the middle of the field. Stone Gaia's smug smile crept up again as he arrogantly bragged that this much power wouldn't be enough to break through his impenetrable defense. At that moment, Midu used his instant movement ability. As fast as lightning, he reached the demon's flank to mount a lethal sneak attack. He brandished his sword, its light filling the room. Stone Gaia responded by drawing his own and deflecting the attack without any issue, even though he was still under domination restraint. Hashimoto decided to contribute by sending the telekinetically charged boulders back to their original sender. Narumi also grabbed the opportunity to sneak his wind manipulation into the mix. He summoned multiple wind lances, a stark contrast to using just one some time ago. The threat of another explosion from the front, a talented swordsman on the flank, and various projectile attacks coming from all angles, that was what Stone Gaia was dealing with. But he still had the confidence that he'd win, like he was Gojo or something. He summoned a stone wall to scatter the melee fighters and expanded it to maximize the gap. Yumi refused to squander their opportunity when they had gotten so close, so she fired up another water attack. This one had enough pressure and energy behind it to shatter the stone wall. The supposed impenetrable defense was turned into nothing but a wet spot on the ground. If his material gets wet, it loses hardness. Mine does the opposite. With a clear line of sight to the target, Midu geared up for another round of attacks, and having Arashi by his side made this a surefire way to deal maximum damage. The combined power of explosions and blades assaulted Stone Gaia's senses, almost sending him straight to the Shadow Realm right then and there. But the old demon had a reputation for his defense for a reason. Even with coordinated attacks coming from all angles, he still believed he could endure. However, as things stood, it was only a matter of time before his defenses completely broke down. Desperate times called for desperate measures, and for the Heavenly King, his best bet was to convert his monstrous amount of defensive mana into offense. Stone Gaia's power and the pressure he emitted made the ground shake and caused the hero candidates to falter. At the precise moment of Stone Gaia's transformation, Kai, Krim, and the others spotted an exploitable weak point. Kai sent a throwing knife straight down to the middle of the demon's forehead, piercing through the skull and brain. It was the bloody end of yet another heavenly demon, and in true gamer fashion, it was a kill steal. Stone Gaia fought hard against death, but in the end he could resist no longer. His heavy corpse fell in front of the hero candidates, and seeing the nightmarish raid boss collapse, the whole class couldn't help but celebrate. They cheered for Midu and Arashi, thinking their heavy hitters secured the victory, but the two knew it wasn't entirely their doing. They both noticed something had intervened at the last moment. Arashi inspected the corpse and saw the throwing knife stained by the pool of blood. He picked it up and instantly had an idea of who had intervened. Arashi was furious. He knew what had happened. Midu scanned the area and located where the knife had come from a crevice in the ceiling. Taking everything into account, he was sure Kai had made the final move. Arashi still couldn't stand that sneaky dude. Narumi approached the so-called MVPs with a toothy grin. Midu awkwardly returned the smile and affirmed that they had done it, but he knew he wasn't the real hero here. Everything had gone as planned, thanks to Yumi's water spells being near Stone Gaia at the final moment. Midu felt the release of a tremendous amount of mana from the demon and realized their method was child's play, which was why Kai had to intervene at a critical time. Hashimoto noticed Midu sulking even after their win and urged him to join in the celebration. Midu wanted to confide in her, but she didn't give him the chance. What mattered was the fall of one of the four heavenly kings that was worthy of celebration. Midju was pushed into the cheering crowd of classmates, looked at their triumphant grins and happy faces, and began to appreciate the win. A win is a win, no matter how you got it. The prideful Arashi, however, couldn't just smile and celebrate knowing he didn't earn the credit. His group was clueless, cheering for their boy. Arashi told them to shut up and asserted he wasn't the one who finished off the demon. One of Arashi's friends, who happened to be near the center, saw what happened at the end, but chose to see it as nothing but a stolen last hit. The whole combatant party was still the one who pushed the Heavenly King into the corner. Midu took Stone Gaia's head and went to the watchtower overlooking the fort, raising it for everyone to see while declaring that they had killed the Heavenly King of Earth. By the blood of the commander, he urged the demons to surrender. Seeing the severed head of their master, every demon dropped their weapon in shock. Captain Amelia rallied her troops with a cry of victory, boosting the morale of every human on the field. Heinrich looked banged up, but he was glad the hero candidates managed to pull it off. It didn't take long for humanity to regain control of the pivotal Fort Aralas. Kai and Mayer were still up to their sneaky antics. She asked how the humans won when both armies were still roughly equal. Kai explained that this was because the Demon King's army often depended on a charismatic figurehead. When that leader fell, organized resistance became impossible. This had also happened after they defeated Wimberg. They were not chased by a single demon after their leader fell. Kai identified this as one of the weaknesses of the Demon King's army. Mayer was also curious if it was okay for Kai to get the last hit, since his goal was just to train and support his classmates from the shadows. In truth, Kai didn't have a choice. After sensing the tremendous killing intent coming from Stone Gaia's transformation, he had to intervene, or the entire class would have been wiped out. Plus, he was just doing his job as an assassin. He hoped that Midu and the others would understand. He might not show it, but he sounded surprisingly overprotective of his peers. Changing the topic, Kai told Mayer to just refer to him by his name. Caught off guard, the elf girl blushed and stumbled over her words. After calming herself down a bit, she timidly asked if she could call him Kai, and he was fine with that level of familiarity. Kai turned around and saw how heavily Mayer was blushing. She tried her best to reason her way out of it, but failed miserably. Right now, two of the four heavenly kings had fallen by Kai's hands. That's half of the Demon King's cabinet of generals. but there were also the Demon King's descendants who were at least as strong as Isabel. The journey to ultimately slay the Demon King was bound to be a long one. Let's shift our focus to a foreign land, where a maiden with beast ears was being hunted by some unscrupulous characters. She might have been banged up, covered in wounds and scratches, but her feisty nature was still on full display. The demons chasing her commented on her heart, but her body was nearing its limit. A young demon relayed the message to his subordinate. He had finally caught the princess. From this point forward, the Federation of Beastmen no longer existed. A week after successfully subjugating the Heavenly King of Earth, Fort Aralas transformed into one of humanity's strongholds. With the army's recent triumph, the atmosphere across the entire kingdom brightened. The morale of the knights soared, and the hero candidates continued to rise in fame and recognition, becoming the hope of humanity. The king personally extended his gratitude to Midu, the leader of the class, for his efforts in the raid of Fort Aralas. He was rewarded with the title of Lord and became an official knight. As soon as he got out of the stuffy throne room, he went to chill and have tea with friends. Hashimoto was amused to see their brave leader so nervous. Amelia also poked a bit of fun, while Heinrich understood that Midu wasn't well versed in noble etiquette. They got him on a crash course before conferring the title, so the audience with the king went as well as it could have. Midu didn't want to show any signs of rudeness to the ruler, putting the whole class in a worse position. But Heinrich believed Midu was just getting unnecessarily dragged into state affairs. As an official knight, he would have to fulfill his duties in the future. Heinrich knew the ins and outs of noble society, making him a great coach. It was an open secret that the church held the highest power in the kingdom. Even Midu's knighthood had been ordered by the Pope. Speaking of knighthood, Midu would now be recognized as the captain of the 11th Knight Corps. They would hereby be referred to as the Heroes Corps, filled with hero candidates, the strongest raid force in the kingdom. Midu curiously asked if there was any meaning behind his new title, or if he would just fall under the church's control. To answer that, Heinrich would have to yap about the complicated state of affairs. Regardless, Midu was now on the same level as the other captains, and that position carried responsibilities. On the outskirts of the fort, Mayor and Kai met up with Kenzaki to get some reports on the gang. She added that it was Mew who insisted on getting a position with authority. Mayor thought this was just a well-deserved promotion, but in reality, the kingdom wanted to turn Midu into a symbol for the masses. The kingdom also wanted to show people that they controlled the hero candidates. In short, it was not good news. Fortunately, Kai was focused and not letting himself get distracted from his goal of going back home. He couldn't shake the feeling that the kingdom and Leonora weren't so different after all. To them, the hero candidates were merely expendable pawns. Before heading out, Kenzaki finally managed to ask who the elf girl was. Kai nonchalantly introduced Mayor. It only took one look for Kenzaki to feel threatened for her Best Girl award. Mayor explained that she and Kai were just traveling companions. When asked the same question, Kenzaki was too flustered to string together a proper answer. She told Mayor she was Kai's friend, but the cold-hearted Kai quickly denied the friendship allegations. Instead of a friend, it was more fitting to call her a collaborator. Kenzaki might have actually preferred that label a little better. In their previous world, they had never even talked to each other. Moving that aside, since he knew that the hero candidates were aiming for the Demon King, Kai would gladly move in the group's shadow, just like he did with Stone Gaia. From now on, Kenzaki was just a messenger between Kai and the rest. Before he moved on to the next destination, Kenzaki pleaded to join the journey. Kai analyzed her from top to bottom and quickly decided to reject Kenzaki's plea, knowing that without her, he wouldn't have any other way to stay in touch with the rest. He knew many candidates were hostile toward his decisions, so Kai really needed someone as dependable as Kenzaki. With her best sure face, Kenzaki accepted the current situation. She was also the only one who knew that the leader of the class looked at Kai with high regard. Kai could only hope that Mew was doing the right thing. Independently, his growth would really make or break the battle against the Demon King, but Kai actually had a formula for this madness. He was fully aware that fighting the Demon King's army would not be a solo venture. Sure, he and Mayor managed to defeat Wimberg together, but in reality, it was a dangerously close victory. Hearing him casually mention killing another heavenly Demon King nonchalantly freaked Kenzaki out. Mayor's cheerful demeanor while explaining how they killed the heavenly king of the wind didn't help either. While the hero candidates were having a hard time barely attaining equal power with Stone Gaia, Kai accomplished the same feat with just 2 people. Moreover, Kenzaki could feel something extraordinary about Mayor. She couldn't help but compare herself to the elf. She knew her domination didn't contribute much against Stone Gaia. Kai also divulged that there were stronger enemies than the 4 heavenly kings. With their current power, it would be impossible to stand against those powerhouses. Kinzaki would have to observe their classmates and the kingdom itself. Kai would stay in touch. She understood her role, and she wanted to do it for Kai. Before leaving, Kai relayed his intent to find his own way to defeat the Demon King to Midu. Mayor ran alongside him cheerfully, saying goodbye to Kinzaki. This conversation ignited a spark of determination within Kinzaki. She couldn't be a background character. She had to get stronger. After the defeat of Stone Gaia, the Holy Kingdom's army launched a large-scale invasion of demonic territories. Thanks to the newly formed Heroes Corps, the morale of the army couldn't have been higher. They used this momentum to push as hard as they could, seizing territory after territory. As a result, the Holy Kingdom managed to conquer numerous forts around Urugo Mountain, leading to the official liberation of Nutrat City. The deaths of 2 heavenly demon kings in such a short span made this conquest possible. Without Wimberg, who was responsible for the Demon King's logistics, it was only a matter of time before they crumbled. What the Holy Kingdom army didn't know was the part that Aragi Kai played in all of this. After the successful campaign, the hero candidates were called back to the kingdom to be celebrated. Narumi drank to his fill at the victory banquet attributed to Thamit. Was a blast. In this world, 15-year-olds are considered adults, so they can drink booze. Hashimoto lectured Narumi about the dangers of underage drinking before taking the beer for herself. Midu laughed, but it didn't look like he was having as good a time as the rest of his comrades. The guy still had his night gear on. Rina noticed this tension and told him to relax. Although the victory was set in stone, some perceptive eyes noticed how the demon army's chain of command was in shambles. Midu also had his doubts, but no matter how much he thought about it, the win just seemed too easy. He even thought they were being tricked and trapped given how easy it was. Rina butted in and criticized Midu for being overly cautious when the Demon King's army seemed like just a band of idiots, but he knew they'd only gotten this far thanks to Kai's support from the shadows. Rina still refused to acknowledge that the edgy Kai could pull off such a feat. Hearing this made Kinzaki feel a bitter taste in her mouth, and she decided to back Kai. She asserted that while they were pushing through the front lines, Kai was destroying the enemy's backline. Kinzaki added that their conquest wouldn't have been possible if Kai hadn't killed another heavenly king around the territory, severely weakening their defenses. Some were apprehensive, but Midu was certain this was the truth. Narumi didn't know how to feel, knowing they had a monster lurking in the shadows as support. Rina was the most skeptical of all, refusing to believe Kai could defeat someone so powerful. Arashi got roped into the conversation and was just upset that these kids interrupted his chicken time. Remembering the blade that dealt the final blow against Staya, he refused to talk about Kai and continued feasting on some good food. Hashimoto argued that they still couldn't forgive Kai, even if his feats were true. Midu slowly walked out of that brain-dead conversation and asked Kenzaki if she had Kai's location. While she didn't know where Kai was, she knew he was working on his own method to kill the Demon King. Speaking of Demon Kings, let's take a look at the western territory of Nutrat City, the demonic kingdom's mainland, in a thickly forested area. Kai stood at the center of an orc encirclement, patiently waiting for the brutes to make the first move. They didn't disappoint. Dodging attacks from the brainless creatures was a breeze for our boy. When another orc tried to take advantage of the situation, Kai delivered a dirty sand shot to its eyes. Caught off guard by such underhanded tactics, the brute took the brunt of it. Surprisingly, Kai started casting the Thundershock spell to deal some damage. Unfortunately, he wasn't skilled enough to pull it off completely, and the failed spell left him open to a vicious club swing aimed at his head. It could have been bad if a certain someone hadn't blanketed the enemies with the flames of a salamander. The orc group was wiped out in seconds, but Kai still scolded Mayor for being overly dramatic. She argued that if his Thundershock hadn't failed, she wouldn't have had to intervene. He hadn't expected magic to be so tricky, especially since he had improved his mana control significantly. With his rare affinity for thunder, which was fast and powerful but notoriously difficult to manage, he figured he should have been able to cast spells easily. If he had gotten one of those elemental divine protections, he would have been unstoppable by now. Regardless, he needed to keep practicing to incorporate thunder into his skill set. His earlier failure might have been due to being distracted by the orc in front of him. One must have a clear idea of power while casting magic. That's why magic shouldn't be used in close quarters combat where focus is split. But Kai was different. He needed to make magic and daggers work at melee range. He realized he would need new and wild powers to take down the Demon King, and he was grateful to have Mayor guiding him through the process with her knowledge as the sage's disciple. Just when his thoughts drifted, Kai sensed an unwelcome presence nearby. Suddenly, a new wave of orcs encircled Kai and Mayor from all sides. Surprisingly, this was good news with an entire tribe emerging from their lair, Kai would have plenty of training dummies to practice on. A few moments later, the crowd grew. It seemed like it wasn't just orcs, but all kinds of beasts and demons that decided to join the fray, each one uglier than the last. Kai didn't care about their overwhelming numbers. He just wanted to get some thundershock practice done. This time, his spell worked, sending a shock of thunder into the bodies of his enemies. Other than the initial crackle, though, it didn't do much damage. Sure, it burnt off some skin, but it wasn't nearly enough to be considered a killing move. At least he managed to use it in actual combat, even if the firepower was seriously lacking. An orc tried sneaking up on him from the side, but Kai simply dodged out of the way. He quickly found a foothold in one of the trees, and showcased a speed and accuracy that left the monsters awestruck. While they were mesmerized by his dazzling movements from above, they didn't notice the rain of blades cutting through them, hitting vital spots and taking out the orcs in gory one-shots. Right now, his most effective weapon was his daggers, imbued with mana and thrown with deadly precision. For now, magic casting needed a lot more work. Up above, a white ape tried to catch him while he was lost in thought, only for its blood to spill on the ground. It was an easy decapitation for Kai, who held onto a tree branch as his thoughts raced. He noticed monsters capable of flight were also joining the fray. He returned to the ground and waited for the perfect moment to strike. With immense concentration and lethal swings, he sent the flying beasts packing back to hell. Kai took to the trees, using them as cover against the monstrous horde. Unfortunately, one beast figured out his plan and knocked the tree down. The sheer number of enemies was overwhelming, making it hard to keep track of everything. Yet Kai's calmness remained unshaken. At the back of the horde was a creature that stood out, a boss monster. At least he could finally test some new strategies on a suitable guinea pig. Twin daggers in hand, Kai used his keen eye to map out his next move. Meanwhile, Mayor was non-stop casting destruction spells against the endless tide of monsters. With her power, as long as she didn't run out of mana, she'd be just fine. But she really wanted to escape the encirclement before both of them were exhausted. Thankfully, Kai was reasonable enough to agree, so they retreated, but not before he splattered the battlefield with monster blood. The duo fled as quickly as they could. On top of the monster numbers, their levels were also high. That's what they got for venturing deep into demonic territory, where demons could easily control low-intelligence monsters. Living in this land was a breeze for them, making it ideal for demons only. They ran until they reached a cliff, a dead end. From up top, they got a real glimpse of the demonic kingdom under the night sky, a grim sight, filled with monsters and strange colors. A week after that reconnaissance mission into demonic territory, things heated up in the Holy Kingdom. They used their momentum to launch another campaign into even more demonic lands. But while riding high on their first conquest, they were in for a rude awakening. This time around, in the woods, their main issue wasn't demons, but the monsters themselves. The quantity and levels of monsters in this territory were unprecedented. They hadn't encountered anything like it before, let alone fought it. Even though they posed no real threat to the rapidly evolving hero candidates and official knights, countless regular soldiers became easy prey for the beasts. Amelia did her best to preserve the troops with formations and counters, but they were soon overwhelmed. Heinrich was quick to realize they were completely outmatched by the demons, who hadn't even shown themselves yet. This hinted at the possibility of a high-ranking demon lurking nearby, orchestrating the monster stampede. Mito's hunch was spot on. There was indeed a high-ranking demon pulling the strings. Her name was Elsa, a demon determined to chip away at humanity's military strength, regardless of the cost in monsters. The moment the human army grew weak enough, that's when the real demonic assault would launch, and that time was now. The Demon King's army took the front lines. Meidu quickly called for a retreat from the commander. Amelia understood they were outplanned and outgunned. Their only chance was a successful retreat. This retreat came at the cost of lives for the soldiers in the rear. Even the demons were left unimpressed by the humans, who were just trying to save face, but this was all they needed to make them turn and flee. The demon soldiers attributed this victory to their cautious boss, Elsa. With this decisive win, humanity should think twice before sending another expedition, fearing the demons' military strength. With demons having just conquered the Federation of Beastmen, they could focus more seriously on the war against humans. If that were to happen, the demon soldiers were confident they would win. From a safe distance, Mayor and Kai watched the entire battle in silence. They learned about the Beastmen, which was definitely a cause for alarm. Being the information fiend that he was, Kai wanted to dig deeper and learn more. The Holy Kingdom's army dejectedly retreated to the nearest human settlement. There, medics worked overtime to treat the wounded while the army's leaders convened to reflect on their failure. They had recaptured all the human territories at the border, but the moment they tried to enter the demon realm, they were hopelessly defeated. With their current current situation, they were open to any reasonable suggestions. The glaring problem was countering the endless waves of monsters in the area. Unless they found a solution, pushing through enemy territory would be wishful thinking. They hadn't expected demons to use such advanced skills and tactics until recently. The Demon King's army had been fighting without proper strategies, but now it seemed they were taking humanity seriously. Midu reckoned they were facing a cunning enemy, a high-ranking demon generating and leading the monster waves. Based on scouting reports, they might manage as long as they passed through the forest of monsters, but that was easier said than done. The area was massive, and paths were limited. Passing through with a whole army would be nearly impossible. Some knights proposed regrouping for now, while figuring out their next move. Despite their success in liberating multiple territories, their losses in the recent expedition were heavy. They could only blame themselves for overextending. After recapturing the lost territories, it had only been possible due to the troops' high morale, which they couldn't rely on anymore. Hashimoto reminded everyone that their goal was the Demon King, but killing that entity wasn't easy. If it were, they wouldn't be suffering now. When asked if she had any suggestions, Hashimoto proposed increasing their army's size, but that would only slow their advance, opening them up to even more casualties. No matter how many soldiers they gathered, casualties would just increase along with them, so Midu proposed focusing on training elite forces instead of increasing the army's quantity. Amelia agreed, saying this expedition already had the cream of the crop on the front lines, and training these elites would increase their chances of survival. It would take time, but it was a more realistic option. The knights liked the idea, but Midu felt inexplicably restless with this route. The kingdom's goal and the hero candidate's goal were vastly different. While Midu and his group aimed to kill the Demon King and return home, the Holy Kingdom was trying to solve its own problems. That's precisely why the high-ranking knights were okay with the status quo, afraid to rock the boat. Heinrich sensed Midu's uneasiness and urged him to speak his mind. Based on the current discussion, the campaign to defeat the Demon King would take years, and they couldn't afford to wait that long. According to Amelia's timeline, it would take roughly 2 years just to recover their strength. Of course, defeating the Demon King as soon as possible would be in everyone's best interest, but they just didn't have enough juice to make that happen. The knights were satisfied with the achievement of liberating lost territories. Midu could see where they were coming from and resigned himself to the fact that the majority had already decided, but he worried about the class. He was certain many of them were itching to go home. After the meeting, Midu, Hashimoto, and Hinish headed out. The noble captain could see how upsetting this was for Mio, but Amelia's judgment was based on the kingdom's best interests. To overturn the situation, they would need more influence. Sadly, they didn't have enough leverage for that yet. Heinrich warned Midu against rushing his thoughts. He was looking out for the kids. The noble captain asked if he wanted to see his friends die. Being impatient would only lead to ruin. Moreover, while the hero candidates might have gotten stronger, they still had plenty of room to grow. It would be better for everyone to hone their skills in preparation for one decisive push. While it was true that everyone wanted to go home to their world, getting killed by demons would be worse than just training for a few more years. Midu knew this better than anyone. If Heinrich hadn't been there to save their asses in the first fight against Stone Ga, they would have been history by now. Furthermore, the demon world's nature devoured the weak, leading to existences stronger than the 4 heavenly kings. The kingdom was counting on the hero candidates and their growth. Finally, after seeing things clearly, Midu accepted the decision and briefed the team. He was the type of guy who would put his friends' lives above all else. He steeled his resolve to become stronger, no matter how long it took. He would make sure everyone got home safely. After briefing the others that they would be staying in this foreign world longer than anticipated, reactions were mixed. They demanded to know how long it would take to return, and Hashimoto uncomfortably answered it would be at least 2 years. 2 years might seem like a long time to prepare, but it was preferable to risking their lives aimlessly. The one who had the most hostile reaction to this compromise was none other than Arashi, who kicked the table in front of him, refusing to acknowledge the plan.